There we go. So again, the unlicensed assistant, they're paid a W-2. They punch a clock. You tell them to come in Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, you get 30-minute lunch, hour lunch, whatever. You and I, the 1099s, we work Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, evenings, weekends. Have you guys learned that about real estate yet? I mean, here we are on a Sunday morning, so this tells you enough right there, doesn't it? One more thing about compensation. There's something called a commercial real estate broker lien. And what this is, it allows the commercial agent, unfortunately not residential, but it allows the commercial agent to put a lien on the property to protect their commission. This is a low priority lien, which means this broker gets paid last. This isn't a matter of when it's recorded. Remember, we talked about lien priorities and pre-licensing. So this is going to be low priority. It's going to be under everybody else, but it still gives them a chance. If they don't file this lien, then they don't have a chance to collect their commission. It's only the listing company that can file the lien. Because remember, typically what our agreements say, the seller pays the listing firm shares their commission with whomever brings the buyer. So it's only the listing side that has the option to file the lien to protect their commission. And again, it's a low priority lien. So you're under everybody else. But if you don't file it, you don't even have a chance. So at least by filing the lien, you got a chance if there's anything left. Wouldn't it be nice if this applied to residential too? To file the lien, the commercial firm has to have, of course, a written agency agreement with the owner. We're going to look at some of our commercial forms. Next week, we're going to talk commercial property management, some of these things that might be newer to some of you. So we'll look at briefly at some commercial forms next week, a few of them. As we said, it's only the listing firm that has the right to file the lien. So the cooperating agent, the selling agent wouldn't have the right to file the lien. They could go after the listing firm to collect their commission, possibly. And then the lien attaches to the property. Again, this is for sale or for lease. This could apply. There's certain filing requirements. This is just more of an FYI. They can't, if it's a sales transaction, it can't be filed no earlier than 30 days prior to closing. If it's a lease, it needs to be done within 90 days of tenant possession or 60 days of not receiving payment. But I don't think we need to get too bogged down in these numbers, because in order to file a commercial lien, the agent or the firm, I should say, is going to have an attorney involved. So the attorney is going to know the filing requirements. Just call your attorney. I think I asked this yesterday. Is anybody, a couple of you are considering commercial? A few of you? Yeah, a couple of you. Okay. Yep. So again, if you don't get paid, you may have repercussions. You might be able to collect, but get with your firm first and then get with your attorney. And the good thing about these is when we talk about going to court, and we talk about the prevailing party and the non-prevailing party, I mean, pretty much we're saying the winner and the loser, right? Somebody wins the case and somebody else doesn't. And usually in cases like this, the non-prevailing party is going to have to pay the court costs, attorney fees, everything for the prevailing party. So as long as the commercial firm has that signed agency agreement from the owner saying, I'll pay you X amount when, then that's pretty much what they're going to need to be the prevailing party. So they don't have to worry about their commission paying for attorney's costs. That's one thing, a concern I always hear. If you sue somebody for commission, you're just paying for those costs, but you could slip something in there that says they pay your attorney fees as well. So get you a good attorney. Don't just call any attorney. Get you a good one that can protect those costs and get you a commission. Questions or comments on that? Okay. Before we go on to the next topic, we're done with this, but I realized last night somehow in all the video excitement yesterday, we did miss a video. So we're going to go back and get caught up on our videos. The one that we did not watch was the activation and affiliation. So once this loads, we will watch this. Okay, so this is our activation. You guys hear it?
The License Activation and Broker Affiliation Form 2.08 is the form you must complete to 1. Activate and affiliate a provisional broker with a firm or sole proprietorship. Commission Rule 58A-0506 dictates that a broker in charge must complete and submit Form 2.08 to activate and affiliate a provisional broker. Or 2. Activate a full broker's license and/or affiliate a full broker with a firm or sole proprietorship. Per Commission Rule 58A-0504D, a full broker may complete Form 2.08 to activate his or her license at any time. Also, a full broker may complete this form to affiliate with a broker in charge as long as the broker has the BIG's permission to do so. Betty Biggs, the broker in charge of XYZ Realty, is here to affiliate Bill Starr, a full broker already on active status. Let's walk her through completing Form 2.08. Before we go further, Betty, let's make sure you have gathered the information the form will require. Do you have Bill's legal name, license number, and private contact information, including his physical home address? Yeah! That's great. Do you have your company's name, type, as in sole proprietorship, LLC, or corporation, firm license number if you have one, and your office's physical address? Yeah! Wonderful. Now that we're sure Betty has all the information needed to complete the form, let's go to www.ncrec.gov. Go to the menu and click on Forms. From the Licensee Forms drop-down menu, choose License Activation and Broker Affiliation, Form REC 2.08. The box at the top of the page directs you to additional instructions on completing this form and reminds you to contact the Commission if you have not received acknowledgement after 25 days. Scroll down to the section entitled Personal Information for the licensee who is activating and/or affiliating. Here, Betty will enter Bill's name, license number, and contact information. The last question in this section asks what type of license Bill holds. Since Bill is a full broker, Betty will select Broker. The next section, Post-Licensing and/or Continuing Education for License Activation, deals with education required for activation. Because Bill's license is already active, no extra education is required at this time. Betty will simply answer yes to the question, is this broker's license currently active? The next question deals with request type. The choices are activation only, activation and affiliation only. Betty is affiliating an active broker, so she will choose affiliation only. The next section, to be completed by broker in charge, is where Betty, as BIC, will input her first and last name and license number, her firm's information, the physical address of the office, and her private contact information. Once she has completed this section, Betty will type her name in the broker in charge signature field. The star at the end of this field corresponds to the following statement. The broker in charge signature is required. However, if the form is being completed by the broker can certify that they have the broker in charge's permission to submit this form. It then asks, is the broker certifying they have the broker in charge's permission to submit this form? Betty, you will select no, the broker in charge signed this form. Finally, check the box beside I am not a robot and click Submit. Once the form has been submitted, Bill will receive an email confirming submission. Per Rule 58A-0504, Broker Bill may begin working for Betty's firm immediately. However, if Bill and Betty do not receive written acknowledgement from the Commission of Bill's affiliation within 30 days, Bill must cease providing brokerage services on behalf of Betty's company, and they must contact the Commission office to determine why the affiliation has not been processed. For more information about license activation or Form 2.08, visit the North Carolina Real Estate Commission's website at ncrec.gov or call the office at 919-875-3700.
Right. Again, the activation form that they're talking about, they got this tab for us here under forms. So that would have been 208. There's your license activation and broker affiliation. So when you guys join your firms, this is the process that your BIC does to put you under, both as a PB and as a broker. So if you move firms or whatever, once you move firms, give it a few days, check your record at the commission, and make sure that you're, that your record updated and you're with the right firm. So again, you can check all your information here on the homepage, your licensee login. So if you haven't been there yet and checked it out, you'll want to at least do it next week to make sure that this class, or 2 weeks to make sure that this class posted. So.
I have a quick question.
Please.
When you have your license and you're a PB, do they have to submit a new form saying you're a full broker now and not a provisional?
No, that's a good question. Once Lane submits you next Sunday, once you've completed all 3, then the commission will drop that provisional status. So you'll get something in the mail. Your broker in charge may get something as well, but you'll definitely get something that'll say that you're just a broker. You're no longer that provisional status. Yep. But again, make sure, give it a few days to process, right? Because Lane's got to do her thing. She's not going to do it next Sunday. And even if she does, nobody's at the commission to receive it. So she'll do it, Monday, and then give it a few days. And you should be able to go in and look at it before you get that in the mail. Okay. Other questions or comments or anything at all we talked about yesterday? The next big topic, where we're going next, and before we go there, let's just kind of back up and have a conversation. NCREC's homepage, and down to here near the bottom is an opportunity for the consumer to file a complaint. So where we're heading next is to talk about the disciplinary process. Just some history for you. The consumer has always been able to get the information to file a complaint from the website. And probably, 5-7 years ago, something like that, the commission's legal team highly advised them that they move this button to the homepage to make it more visible to the consumer. What do you think happened to the number of complaints when they moved this button to the homepage? Oh my goodness, they said it blew up through the roof because the consumer can now get to it more easily. So let's first off, before we get, I know this isn't our favorite conversation. I know this isn't, but before we get to it, let's just first off, rest assure you a few things. Just because the consumer clicks this button doesn't mean you're going to face disciplinary action. Okay, the consumer files a complaint. The first thing the commission does is they review it to make sure that the complaint is warranted. Is it a violation of license law and commission rule? Is it a violation of public safety, right? Have they harmed the public? I don't like the color of Julie's shirt isn't going to get that far. Sometimes people just need to vent. Things don't go the way that they think it should. And in the end, they're trying to vent. So the commission first reviews this and makes sure that there was an actual violation. If there was a violation, and we're going to talk more about this in just a second, but if there's an actual violation, the commission will send you, the complainant, what's known as a letter of inquiry. And the letter of inquiry is your opportunity to respond to the complaint. Again, you're not in trouble yet. You're not facing disciplinary action yet. You're just given your opportunity to share your side of the story. The commission does understand that there are 2, if not 3 sides to each story. So they do give us the opportunity. When you respond to the letter of inquiry, do you think you're going to be able to pick up the phone and call the real estate commission and say, I didn't do it? Yeah, that's not going to work, is it? You need to prove that you didn't do it with your documentation. Why don't you guys remind me what we document? Everything. Part of the reason I want you guys to document everything is because I want you to have a response. The commission is not going to listen to you. They're going to read it from you. Does that make sense to everybody? The onus is on you to prove that you did or did not do whatever it is you're being accused of. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is with your documentation. So to make sure we're clear on what everything means, I want you guys to save all of your agency agreement disclosure paperwork. I want you to save all of your emails received and sent, any of your .loop or DocuSign or zip form communications, text messages. Do you guys know you can download an app that will convert a text message to a PDF? Search your app store. Search your app store. If you're Google or iPhone or whatever you use, search your app store. Mine is just called text to email. Text to email. And what it does is I can take a text conversation, again, I will download it to a PDF. And now I have a PDF with my conversation with whomever, date, time. And now I can put that PDF in my transaction file. Do we need to call that homework for this week? But get the app. This is huge because this is how we communicate a lot these days, right? We're not calling, we're not emailing, we're texting. It doesn't do emojis. Mine doesn't do emojis. It's just text. So you may have some blanks where your smiley faces were or whatever. Anytime you have a verbal conversation with somebody of substance, you need to go home and follow it up with an email. You need to go home and follow it up with a text. It's okay to send an email that says, per our conversation, blah, 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 blah. That's your documentation of having the conversation. Because guys, if it gets down to it and we have to go stand in front of the real estate commission or worse, a judge, and we're standing there going, I never said that. If you got verbal, you got nothing. So when we say document everything, I mean document everything. I'm going to be honest with you guys. My admin role over the years, I've seen several letter of inquiries. None of them had my name on it. I feel the need to throw that in there real quick, but I've seen several letter of inquiries, and the ones that I've seen personally, my agents were able to avoid disciplinary action because they were able to respond with the proper documentation. They were able to respond and prove that they didn't do what they were being accused of doing. For an example, I had a
question.
teammate. Yeah, please.
Sorry. To file a complaint, how long does like the consumer have? Like, is that why we keep our records for 3 years so we could like argue, or do they have longer than 3 years? Do you know what I mean? Like, could it be like
Yeah.
5 years ago they sold me this house and file a complaint now, or?
I mean, they could hit that button. I'm not sure what kind of defense they would have 5 years later. You know what I'm saying? And that's always a good point, Maria, because the commission does only require us to keep records for 3 years, but what if you get a complaint from 5 years ago? So I think the key word there is keep stuff for at least 3 years. And to your point, I'm not sure if there's a statute of limitations, but I'm not sure what they can do about something that happened, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Bottom line, it's the similar thing. If you're going to sue somebody, they say if you're going to sue somebody, do it sooner rather than later. So I would think that the commission had that same kind of mentality. Why are you just now coming back 5 years later? But with that being said, there are agents in the past couple years that are getting complaints filed on them from 20 years ago, when their people, you know, bought a house on a septic and they misrepresented the number of bedrooms, or bought a home in a new subdivision and the streets were misrepresented. So I don't know how far those actual complaints are going, but I know you and I today are being strongly instructed to only put in the number of bedrooms as listed on the septic permit. We're being strongly instructed to, you know, research those roads before we disclose them. So things can always come up. And that's the thing about the commission. Everything is handled on a case-by-case scenario. So there is no across the board blanket disciplinary action. Everyone is reviewed case by case. But that is why we're asked to keep things for at least 3 years. So if a complaint does come up, then we have something. But if we're, you know, again, .loop keeps stuff for 10. So I feel comfortable with that. I had a teammate had a complaint filed on her it's probably been about 3 or 4 years ago. They were cash buyers, her buyers, and they were cash buyers. And she asked them if they wanted an appraisal because they were asking her lots of questions about value. She said, I can give you probable sales price, but I'm not an appraiser. I can't give you value. And they said, no, we're fine. We don't want an appraisal. That whole conversation went down via text, first off. And then she had them sign the professional services disclosure. If you're not familiar with that form, you know what? I'm going to show you that form because it's a very important form. So I'll pull it up on our first break and show it to you guys after break. So the professional services disclosure, they waived the appraisal. So she had the text conversation saying, no, we don't want one. And then they had the professional services disclosure. Transaction closes. Buyers feel like they overpaid. What did they do? They came to ncrec.gov and clicked on file a complaint. She got the letter of inquiry. She responded with her appropriate documentation. She responded with her text messages. She responded with that professional services disclosure. And the next thing she heard from the commission was, thank you for your cooperation. This matter's been closed. Have a nice day. But do y'all know the stress that she went through during those 2 weeks? I mean, she didn't know. She didn't know if her real estate career was over, or she didn't know what the outcome was. To me, it seemed unnecessary. And I fear in this market, because buyers are overpaying, buyers are offering lots more than asking price. I fear we're going to start seeing maybe an influx of complaints. Especially when buyers realize how underwater they are. So the only way to protect yourself is to document. And I'm not kidding when I say everything. Everything. So let's talk, again, our third section is the disciplinary process. We used to call it the brown envelope, because in the mail, you'd open your mailbox one day and you had a brown envelope for the real estate commission, and that only means one thing. I'm hearing now recently that the letter of inquiry is coming via email. So I guess we can't call it the brown envelope anymore if we're not physically touching a brown envelope. The real estate commission puts on an educators conference spring of every year. And this information I pulled straight from our educators conference this past March. And one of the first things that the educators conference does is the director of the commission's name is Miriam Barr. If you want to see that name, look on your pocket card. She's who signs your pocket card each year. And Miriam starts with kind of a state of the commission speech and where are we going this year and what did we do last year. So the different licensee types, and this was February, so I know these numbers have come up since. There's our LNCL. We were talking about this yesterday. I said there were more of them than what I ever realized. I mean, 283 of them. But your active full brokers, active provisional brokers, inactive and inactive. So there's some big numbers out there right now. And then she also shares with us this chart each year that shows the number of complaints. This would have been the year that they implemented the button, that they put the button on the home page. And now it's easier for the consumer to click on that button. But just because the consumer clicked on that button, the number of complaints, or excuse me, the number of disciplinary actions has been staying steady. That's not that green line, but that number of disciplinary actions been staying steady. So what the commission's learning is there's just a bunch of people out there that some just need to vent. So again, when that happens, and I'm sorry they had a poor experience, but the best way that, or they felt that they had a poor experience, I should say, but the best way to protect ourselves is to have that documentation, because you don't know who or when can go click on that button and the commission sends you a letter of inquiry. I wanted to share also from that conference in March. I wanted to share with you guys the biggest complaints that they got from 2021. So maybe if you're any of, doing anything this that we can, stop right now. But last year, 2021, the biggest complaints that they got, there was a lot of complaints about misrepresentation of material facts. Guys, please remember, we always have a duty to disclose material facts. We can't keep our mouth closed. We certainly can't lie about it. Square foot misrepresentations. Remember, if you are measuring, is anybody measuring your own home? You guys measuring your own listings? A couple of you. Just make sure if you're measuring your own listings, you're using the North Carolina square footage guideline booklet, that little yellow, I call it your measuring Bible. If you're paying somebody to measure your listings for you, they need to have more experience than you, because maybe an appraiser, maybe a seasoned agent that's been around longer, but no matter who measures it, you're responsible for it. So if you're paying somebody to do it, make sure the person you're paying knows what they're doing. Anybody paying somebody to do it? A couple of you, yeah. So just make sure. I told you guys yesterday, one of the benefits of a team, we have a general contractor on our team. So I got a GC on speed dial as well as Patricia Moylan, which is very nice. And our general contractor does our measuring. So I feel very, very, and you talk about somebody that's detailed, my goodness. So I feel very, confident with him measuring our listings. Misrepresentation of the number of bedrooms. Again, guys, please, if you're listing a home that's on an on-site septic, you can only advertise the number of bedrooms per the septic permit. Did everybody hear what I just said? Is that worth repeating? Only list the number of bedrooms per the septic permit. The seller says, it's got 4. The permit says 3. How many can you advertise? 3. And again, this is what's coming back to bite some agents in the butt 10, 20 years later. Buyers or sellers, when they bought the home, they bought a 4-bedroom, and now they're going to sell it, and they're being told they can only sell it for a 3. They're not happy about this, understandably. Have you ever shown a property, maybe it's advertised for 3 bedrooms, and you're standing in what could be a perfectly good 4th bedroom? There's no reason why it couldn't be, but MLS calls it an office or a bonus room. The reason for that, check the permit. Questions on that, comments on that? They're cracking down hard on that. How many human heartbeats per bedroom? 2 human heartbeats per bedroom. So if they advertise 3 bedrooms, that means that on-site septic system has the capacity for 6 people. And remember, that on-site septic is all water leaving the home. Washer, dishwasher, that's how that's calculated. Whether or not the water's on city, public, or city or community water or sewer, that was a big misrepresentation last year. And some agents are coming back and saying, well, my seller didn't know. My seller didn't know if it was public water or if it was private well. So what's the easiest way to tell if it's on public or not?
Go to the city verification.
You can call the city, or you can just ask to see their utility bills. Ask to see their most recent water bill, their most recent city bill, and that'll tell them if it's on water or sewer. That would be a great place to start. And you're right, if you have additional questions, then we need to, sit down with your sellers. Let's all pick up the phone together and call the city and verify. We talked about yesterday about certain things in our transactional files. One thing that my firm has started doing is requesting the seller's most recent utility bills. Let me see a copy of your city bill. Let me see a copy of your power bill, because now we can actually see what that is. You got to ask questions. Again, you guys, it blows my mind how many sellers say, I don't know. Okay. All right. Well, we got to get to the bottom of this, because we need to make sure that we're representing that properly. Age of systems. I think one time gets away from us when you ask the seller how old their roof is, and they say, I don't know, maybe 5 years old, and then come to find out it's like 25 years old. You just be careful when you advertise the age of systems. If they don't know for sure, we can always ask if they kept records. Do they have their documentation? I would just be careful on your wording. If you don't have receipts, if you don't have records, I wouldn't say brand new AC unit. You could say newer unit, right? But I would just be very careful on how you advertise if we don't have documentation. And then recent renovations. Did they pull permits? Some counties, I believe some counties you can go online and view the permits, but not all counties are set up the same way. Register of Deeds, county GIS is generally a good place to start anyway. And again, don't be afraid to ask your seller, did you pull permits? If they pull permits, they should have a certificate of occupancy. They should have a CO. So just make sure that you're properly representing the features of the home. Another big common complaint last year, and this one doesn't surprise me. Buyers are complaining about high due diligence fees. They said, I paid $50,000. I had the home inspection and found out that the whole home needed rewired, that all the electrical was bad. And I terminate, and I'm not getting my $50,000 back. The buyers don't understand. Who does that fall back on if the buyers don't understand? Who's responsible for that? That's us, y'all. This complaint is because of us. We are not doing our job and explaining to our buyers. The due diligence fee is non-refundable in most cases. No matter what the home inspection reveals, the seller doesn't have to refund it. If the buyer terminates for any reason, the seller keeps the due diligence fee. If your buyer wants to offer $10,000 on due diligence, we need to make sure that they understand the risk. We need to make sure that can I tell anybody what to do? I haven't figured that out yet. I don't think I can, but it's my job to make sure that my buyer understands the good and the bad. And I think this one totally falls back on us as a whole. I don't think we're doing the proper job of explaining this to our buyers. What comments or questions do I have about this? This is a big one. And I think as the market neutralizes, we're going to see due diligence and earnest monies simmer down some, right? I think the day of $50,000 in earnest money is going to be in the past soon, but we're always going to be dealing with due diligence and earnest money.
This is a conversation that I always document with my clients because you can tell them and tell them and tell them. And then sometimes they still come back and say, well, I didn't know, or I didn't understand. And so I always put that conversation in writing.
Awesome. That's brilliant. Because guys, buyers and sellers are not reading the offer to purchase and contract. That's why they hire us, because they rely on us to provide them with this. So don't just hand them a sample and think they're going to read it and understand it. How many times did you have to read it before you got it? And it's okay. It doesn't click the first time or the third or the fifth time. It takes time. So don't expect your buyers and sellers to pick this 15-page document up and walk away being proficient in the offer to purchase and contract. That's our job. So Chastity, I think that's very smart that you document. I have a coworker and she's got a separate sheet and she says, this is what the earnest money means, may be refundable. This is what due diligence means, is not refundable. And then she has her buyer's initial at the bottom so that they acknowledge that they have seen that piece of paper. I think one important thing about working with buyers that all buyers have a different risk level, right? Some buyers, I mean, would you go to Vegas this week with your savings account? Some people would do that. Some people wouldn't. Would you go to Sheetz and get a scratch off ticket? Some people would do that. Some people would. What? Like different people have a different risk level. And one thing, especially when things are very competitive, like they have been lately, I think one thing that we can do as agents is help the buyer determine their risk level. How much are you willing to lose to possibly get this house? And that's where we are with the due diligence fee. Other comments on this? Another common complaint from last year. This one's a little ridiculous if you ask me, but you didn't. Don't be sending your buyers to properties without you there. You need to be there with your buyers. Don't just give them the combo and say, you can go at 3 o'clock tomorrow and then let me know how it goes. We need to be there with our buyers. First off, it is none of their business what those combo codes or front door, you got the keypads now on a lot of homes. We don't need to be giving that information to somebody that's not licensed. If you're not available to show your buyer that property tomorrow at 3 o'clock, then find somebody in your office that can help you out, right? Have somebody go with them. The buyer's not licensed. They're not held to the same standard that we are. So we don't need to be providing this information. We also need to make sure, y'all, it's still the seller's house. And we need to make sure that we're respecting the seller's home when we're in there. Have you guys seen videos yet of kids jumping up and down on the bed during the showing? That's not respecting the seller's home. Don't let your buyers terrorize that home, and certainly don't let them go alone. The other complaint they got is that the buyer's agent is allowing the buyer to move in before closing. Not the seller. The buyer's agent is saying, oh, you can move in the night before. There was a case, the buyer had been living there. The home was vacant. It had always been vacant. And the buyer's agent let the buyer move in like 3 or 4 days before closing. And the night before closing, the seller went by just to say goodbye to the house. And lo and behold, found the buyers. I don't know. To me, that's a phone call to the cops for trespassing, as far as I'm concerned. And their defense was, well, my agent told me that was okay. Don't do that. We have to get permission from the sellers to be in their home. Another common complaint from last year, continue to blow our minds a little bit, stealing during showings. There are buyers and agents on video going through medicine cabinets, going through kitchen cabinets, taking prescription medications. They are on video, buyers and agents. Instruct your sellers during showings or open houses. Don't keep your prescription meds in a medicine cabinet or a kitchen counter. It's so easy to open. Oh, here you go. Guys, when a buyer's viewing a home and seriously interested, they should be encouraged to look in closets, to look in cabinets, right? Because when they buy the home, the kitchen cabinet comes with it. So why are sellers putting their meds there? They should be putting them in a dresser drawer, maybe even a lockbox or something. Same thing with weapons, jewelry. Now, we can't go through dressers and desk drawers during the showing, right? Personal property. One thing that happened during COVID that I liked, and I hate that it went away. When the pandemic first started, sellers for showings were leaving cabinet doors and closet doors open, because they didn't want buyers coming in and touching stuff. So they were leaving all those doors open. I thought, that's nice, because then you're inviting them to look in there anyway, but you don't have to worry about touching stuff. And I think that probably went away. Comments on this? Y'all, it's 2022. You need to conduct your life as if you're on camera, because you know what? You probably are, especially when you're showing somebody's home. Is this mind blowing to y'all? I just sat at this conference, just chin on the table. Like, are you kidding me? The other big complaint they got last year, agents not acting professional. You know how many complaints they got from the consumer saying that their agent cussed them out? And the really good agents did it via email. So now what does the consumer have? Documentation. If you're going to cuss somebody out, at least do it verbally where you can deny it, right? I mean, don't do it in email where they can say print and say, here you go. Cussing somebody out is not necessarily a violation of license law and commission rule, but it could fall under be acting unworthy or incompetent. Y'all need to understand that we are the professional in this transaction, and we need to conduct ourselves as such. There are other ways to vent our frustration besides cussing the consumer out. There was a disciplinary action a couple months ago. I want to say it was the beginning of the year. The buyer's agent was going to show the property. She got to the home early. And so she went in, turned the lights on, you know, got the home show ready. Not uncommon, right? Her buyers weren't there yet. So my girl swung by the bar and made herself a cocktail and proceeded to have her a drink from the seller's bar before her buyer showed up for the showing. And yes, the whole thing was on record. It was recorded. They had video on the whole thing. Wait till after the showing to go out and have a cocktail. Again, that's stealing, isn't it? You're helping yourself to the seller's bar. That's theft. She faced disciplinary action for that. Comments on that? This just blew my mind. This is what happened last year. This is what the commission dealt with last year.
Some agents just feel entitled.
You know, they give some of us a bad name, right? I mean, of this whole list, again, the only thing that I think that we as a whole can do better is the due diligence conversation. And again, as time goes on, due diligence and earnest monies are coming down and down and down. There was a good article by the commission in one of the bulletins. We'll look at some bulletins in a second, but it was addressing these due diligence issues and concerns. And, you know, bottom line, the commission says it doesn't matter if the due diligence is for $5, $50, $500, or $5,000. It all means the same thing. It is all about the buyer's right to terminate for any reason or no reason at all. And that's what the due diligence fee is for. So y'all promise me you won't cuss your clients out. You won't drink from the bar. I don't want to read about you in the disciplinary action.
Can't promise based on that profanity.
You know, a trick, when I'm sending an email, I always do the to field last.
The what?
The to field, who's it going to? I always do that last, so I can't accidentally send it, because sometimes the first email I pound out isn't the email that actually gets sent. So don't fill in that to field until you know that it's professional and it's ready to go. You guys ever do that? Take your frustration out on your keyboard and then back. Yep. That's okay to take frustration out, but don't send it. Text messages. Y'all don't cuss your customers. All right.
I go to my note sections. And like I always, I don't do that anymore because I've accidentally sent, you know, and then you have regrets. So then I'll just do a rough draft of what I'm going to say.
There you go.
If I'm in my phone, I go to my notes. If I'm on my computer, I go to my notes.
There you
Or
go.
Word
So you just pretty
document.
much pull up a Word document and type and then copy and paste. See, that's really smart too.
Yeah,
Um,
yes, because I did that and oh my
And-
goodness, why did I send that?
there ain't no getting it back, is it? Once they're
No
hit send. I
getting it
know in
back.
Gmail you got like 5 seconds to undo it. And that you got to think fast, right? Before that button goes away and it's too late. So yeah, just think before you send. Like I said, I never fill in the to field of an email until I've reviewed it a couple times and I know it's ready to go. Because we've all done it. Once you send it, it's gone. So hopefully, if you haven't learned that lesson yet, please listen to what to what we're telling you and what the commission is saying happened last year. Unbelievable. Other comments? All right, well, we're at our first break. So let's take 10. We'll come back at 10:05. And we'll talk about some prohibited acts of the Real Estate Commission. All right. I went ahead at break and in Learn Test Pass in our Campbell folder, I put this professional services disclosure form that I was talking about. Are you guys familiar with this form? Those of you that are active, are you using it? If you're active and you're not using it, please start now. If you're inactive, start using it as soon as you active. Y'all, this is our form. We say the Real Estate Commission's main purpose is to protect the public, but they do care about us as well. And this is one form provided by NCAR, but this is one form that protects us. So the professional services disclosure is between the buyer or seller and the firm. So we can do this with buyer or seller. And basically what we're doing is we're listing all the services that the buyer or seller may look at you and say, this is a service I want during my transaction. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But for each of these services, you can see they have the option to waive the service or select the service. And if they select the service, then we say, who's going to order it? Am I going to order it? Is the buyer going to order it? So there's no confusion about who orders it. And then who's providing that service? So the way this form is supposed to be treated, and there's several different variations of this that I've heard. I tend to use this as like a working document, so it can change and update throughout the process sometimes. You know, the day we go under contract, we can start, like, we should know who the attorney is, especially if they're holding the earnest money. Maybe when we go under contract, I'm just kind of making stuff up here, but maybe the buyer doesn't know if they're going to get a home inspection yet. And so we can fill this in later once they decide. You guys with me? We could put TBD in here for now and then come back later and change it once they decide that they do. But once we've been through most of the transaction, everything should be waived or selected. Everything should be acknowledged that we do or do not want this service, understanding that it can be updated, it can be changed. I've heard of some agents that bring this to closing with them and sit down at the settlement table and say, let's complete it now. By then it's kind of late, isn't it? Because now you're not saying if you waive or selective, now we're saying you did or you did not do it. So we're not really giving them the option. Again, for us, we start ours when the contract form. When we start with the sellers at the beginning, we start with the buyers when the contracts form and kind of the various services. I think another bad habit that agents have is only having them initial the services that they want. But I think it's important that we have them initial the services that they're waiving. Again, my example earlier with my coworker, where they waived the appraisal. She had this box initialed where the buyers actually said, we're waiving the, or not, yeah, waiving the appraisal. So it was her documentation that kept her out of trouble. Comments on this form? This is a good one. I like this too. Do you guys have a hard time getting your buyers to order a survey? Convincing them the importance of a survey? I see some head shaking. This kind of gives us one last plea on why they should consider a survey. It talks about how title insurance may not cover an issue that could have been detected had they had a survey done. So it gives us one last opportunity to plead. And again, if ultimately they say no, then we just make sure that we have them initial that service. So when an issue comes up, I mean, they can try to come back on us, but at least we have a defense. This is one of these forms that if I want to get paid, this form is in my transaction file. My firm calls this a mandatory form. Looks like Chastity's does too. Yep. Michelle's, yep. It's a good one. Again, I've put this in, if you're not practicing and you want to grab it, I've put this in our Campbell folder and Learn Test Pass, so just make sure you refresh or log back in. Another thing I want to point out, we looked at this yesterday, but now that we're talking about it, back to the Real Estate Commission's homepage, publications. This is where I go the most, publications. And what I like a lot about this is these Q&A brochures. And we have brochures for explaining due diligence, Q&A on due diligence for buyers, and explaining the earnest money deposit. So use this to help you with this conversation with your buyers and sellers, but particularly buyers, about what the earnest money deposit is for. Again, I'm a big fan on why recreate the wheel. The information is right here. Use this to help you explain, especially we are still in this market of crazy due diligence and earnest money fees. So until those get back to normal, whatever that means, make sure they're educated and they know what those fees and deposits are going for. So use the tools that you have available to help you explain. All right. So the next little piece that we have to talk about with our disciplinary action are the prohibited acts. So before we go through the process of the disciplinary action, let's talk about how you can avoid this process altogether. And let's make sure we have an understanding on the prohibited acts, things that we can't do. I pulled this, again, this is in our Campbell folder in Learn, Test, Pass. And I pulled this straight from the comments section of the License Law and Commission Rule. So they spell out most of the prohibited acts. There's a few more that we need to go back and grab. But I think I just decided I just wanted to just take it straight from the commission instead of trying to recreate the wheel. So one prohibited act, as we mentioned earlier, first off, we need to have an understanding of misrepresentation and omission. We always have a duty to disclose material facts. I feel like that's worth me saying again. We always have a duty to disclose material facts. Are you my client? I owe you material facts. Are you my customer? I owe you material facts. There's never a reason not to disclose. If I could twist that just a little bit, no matter what my role is. Am I the listing agent? Am I the buyer's agent? Am I the seller sub-agent? Am I a dual agent? Am I a designated dual agent? We never have a reason not to disclose material facts. And as we discussed earlier, one of the big things happening with material facts is they're being misrepresented. They're being lied about. No, this isn't broke, or no, that doesn't leak, when in fact it does. A misrepresentation is a lie. You somehow put the wrong information out there for the public. Maybe you meant to, maybe you didn't, but somehow the wrong information got put out there. Maybe you verbally put it out there. It was in your MLS advertising, email, text message, however you communicated that false information. An omission then means you didn't put the information out there. You omitted it from your conversation or your advertising or your text or your email. This provides us with a nice little review about specifically things that are material facts in North Carolina. Any fact about the property itself, relating directly to the property, maybe zoning change, for example, zoning amendment. Facts about the ability of the principal to complete the transaction. This tends to revolve around financing. If the seller is in foreclosure or facing bankruptcy, or if the buyer can't get loan approval, we've got to disclose that. That's a material fact. And then facts of known specific importance to a party. When I'm working with buyers, I operate by a pretty simple philosophy. If it's important to my buyer, then it's important to me. So if my buyer says I need a house with, I had a buyer once, she said, my dining room table sits 10, 8 on each side and 2 at the head and foot. She said, I don't take the leaf out. I leave service for 10 up year round. I have a china cabinet and a credenza. My dining room will fit, or my dining room will fit my dining room furniture. Did I have a material fact on my hand? Did I have something important to my buyer? She expressed something important to her. So now I had a duty to make sure that her dining room fit her furniture. If it's important to my buyer or seller, then it's important to me. Quick reminder, things that are not material facts in North Carolina: death or serious illness of a previous property occupant. We don't have to disclose this. We can't lie about it though. We never have a reason to lie. So we don't have to disclose if somebody's died in the home or if there was a serious illness in the home. But if I'm asked, I can't lie about it. Have you guys had that buyers ask you that yet? Walk in the front door and they say, did somebody die in this house? And it happens all the time. So if you don't know, your honest answer might be, I don't know. But if let's just pretend, for example, that this current owner is your friend and you know darn well nobody died in this house while they owned it. What about the previous owner and the owner before them and the owner before them, right? How far back do you need to go? So if you can't answer that question, the other thing in North Carolina that's not a material fact is the presence of convicted sex offenders nearby. The public generally doesn't like this. They don't like that this isn't a material fact. And when it comes to this, I'm a huge fan of being the source of the source. Direct them to the North Carolina Sex Offender Registry website. Let them look it up. I had a friend call me interestingly just a couple weeks ago, and her sister-in-law bought a house. So her sister-in-law buys a house, and after they moved in, they found that he hadn't been convicted yet. So he was on trial for a sex offender prosecution. So he hadn't been convicted yet. But they somehow found out that the previous owner was going to trial in like November or something. And she called me furious. Shouldn't they have known that before they bought the house? And I was like, well, first off, he doesn't live there anymore, right? Like he moved out, she bought that house. And I was trying to explain this to her and she really didn't like what I was having to say because I was trying to tell her, first off, he's not convicted. So there's nothing to report, right? You can't accuse somebody of a crime until they're evicted, shouldn't until they're evicted. But secondly, convicted. But secondly, it's not a material fact in North Carolina. And I just think in general, the public doesn't like hearing that information. They want to know that we share this information. So the best way and the best thing we can do to protect them is just advise them to go to the Sex Offender Registry website. Again, when you're working with buyers, especially buyers that have kids, I'd say this question comes up a lot. You guys heard that yet? Yeah, I'd say it comes up quite a bit. Comments on things that are or not material facts in North Carolina?
Hey, Julie,
Mhm.
what would your response be to someone who asks you about death in the home? Like, what would you actually say?
So when I've been asked in the past, generally my answer is that I don't know, because that is my honest answer. You know, I've only known of one incident, and it was in a state, and the seller shared because the individual did die in the house, and so the seller did share. But you know, this isn't. How does New Jersey handle this? Is this a material fact in NJ?
No.
Okay, and the reason I ask is because I've had buyers come from other states and say you have to find this out. You have to disclose this. In North Carolina, we don't. So, I mean, they're welcome to research, to do some research, see if they can't find anything, maybe hit the paper or something, but this isn't where we get involved. And I'm not saying I try to divert the conversation, but I try not to get bogged down in it either, because if I don't know, I don't know.
Yeah, and if we're not asked, like I had someone die and it's a young kid actually overdosed, and in one of my properties. I never disclosed that.
And we don't have to.
Excuse me?
We don't have to.
Oh, okay, right.
Yep,
Mhm.
yep, we don't have to disclose. The only thing we can't do is lie. So in that incident, you didn't disclose it, but if a buyer walked in and said somebody died here, you can't say, right? So you couldn't lie about it, but you don't have to disclose it. And that's the same thing with the convicted sex offender. We don't have to disclose it.
Right, we do the same, refer them to and even about crimes,
Have them, yeah, I mean, there's so many,
Local
have
police.
them call the police department. You know,
Right.
get the police report, or there's, what is one, like crimespot.com. I mean, there's a cajillion of those out there that'll send you a police report. So have them do a little bit of research, I think, because don't we all have a different tolerance too? I mean, if you find out that there was crime nearby, I don't know, for me, it's what kind of crime, you know, was there, you know, something, I don't know, if it was vandalism, I probably wouldn't get too excited about that. I would just be protective of my stuff. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's got a different level of tolerance. I took I guess it was CE several years ago. We were still in person, and this conversation came up again. You guys, it amazes me how many topics in pre-licensing and post-licensing you're going to bump into in your future CE classes. So, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, we did material facts again. And the one gentleman in the class said he had a listing, he was at a listing appointment, and the sellers told him the gentleman across the street is a convicted sex offender. And they said, do we have to disclose this? And the agent said, no, we don't have. He said, what do you think? And they had a conversation about it. And at the end of the conversation, the sellers chose to disclose, because they said, if we were buying with young kids, we would want to know. So the sellers made that decision to disclose, and the agent said, if that's what you want to do, you know, by all means. I found that very admirable, you know, good for the sellers for being willing to put that out there, and they sold it. You know, they were just making the people aware, but their conscience advised them to disclose that information. So sometimes it's just a conversation with your buyers and sellers, trying to get their take on it as well.
Is that legal?
What's that?
I was just wondering. I was just thinking. I had to process that. Is that legal for someone to discourage, that could discourage buyers without the buyers doing their own due diligence and going to look at the registry for a seller to disclose someone's sexual crime, that they are a sexual offender?
Well, it's public knowledge, right? Because he's registered on the registry. So it's public knowledge anyway. And you know, you could probably even follow it up with, you know, buyer to confirm or buyer to verify, which once again would send them to the sex offender registry website. I don't know about the legalities of it, but it is public record.
I know we can't as agents, right? So we would definitely have to refer them. Okay. Let the seller have a sign up?
No. And I don't know how they, you know, I'm sure it wasn't in public remarks or anything, but if a serious buyer came along, right, somebody, you know, there, you can have a showing, but we don't have a serious buyer yet. So that might have been something that they, you know, I don't know how he disclosed it, but I'm sure it wasn't part of his advertising. This is terrible. I should know that. Is it Heather's Law? No. What's Megan's, thank you, Megan's Law. Megan's Law is what requires convicted sex offenders to register on the website. That's what requires them to make that known. But again, keep in word the mind, convicted. Not all sex offenders are caught yet, right? So obviously they're not going to register. What about the ones that are currently going through the court trial, the process, to determine if they are convicted or not? Yeah. It gets tricky. I agree. It gets tricky. Anybody dealt with anything with this yet? I think my big thing, and you know, buyers will ask, and I'll say, let's go to the registry. Let's look it out again on the source of the source, that buyer to verify. I showed a house once. The buyers were from Iowa or Idaho or Illinois. I don't know, one of those I states, Indiana, maybe, I don't know. And they said, did somebody die in this house? And I said, I don't know. You have to tell us state law. And I said, time, and not here. And wherever they were from, obviously that was a material fact that it had to have been disclosed. And that's part of us being aware of North Carolina law, that it may not be the same, especially when you got buyers coming from other states. So they may have one experience in one state and then they come here and we're standing in North Carolina now. So this is how, at the time I didn't know. I found out later that somebody did die in that house, but at the time I didn't know. One of my coworkers ended up buying the house, and neighbors talk. So we found out after it was purchased that someone did die. But I've had buyers, I haven't, but I've known agents that have had buyers want to bring the priest by to check out the vibes of the house. Is there good vibes or they're bad vibes, you know, during their due diligence. And maybe that's what they need for that peace of mind. Have you guys walked into a house yet and the teeny tiny hairs on the back of your neck stand straight up? Woo, something's not right there. I showed a house once and my buyers were active military deployment. So I'm showing them property. She was currently stationed in Italy and he was currently stationed in Japan. So we were trying to buy a house on 3 different time zones. The 3 of us were on 3 different time zones. So I was going through and video homes for them and then sending them so they could watch them, you know, in their time and let me know. And I was showing a house in the neighborhood that my husband grew up in. And, you know, I walked in the front door and, oh man, the chills and the vibes. And I'm trying to go through with like a steady hand and a steady voice to film this home, but I'm trying to get through as fast as I possibly can because I want it out of there because it just creeped me out. And later I told my husband which house in his neighborhood. He's like, oh yeah, that place is haunted. I was like, oh my gosh, you know, that was the haunted house in the neighborhood. And I was like, why did you let me go in there? He said, well, I didn't know you were showing that one. I was like, oh my gosh. So yeah, sometimes our senses can tell us when something's off kilter. I don't know. I was terrified to walk into the next room and around the corner because I didn't know what I was gonna see. It was crazy. With our conversation with misrepresentation and omission, I'll kind of let you guys go through these. You know, in pre-licensing, we kind of hone in on willful and negligent. And bottom line, I think just what we need to focus on right now is misrepresentation and omission. We can't lie. We never have a reason to lie. And we can't omit material facts. We always have a duty to discover and disclose material facts. I left it in here though, just because there's some good examples about the various forms of misrepresentation and omission. So if you guys want to look at it, you have it available to you in Learn, Test, Pass. Talking about these prohibited acts, again, trying to keep us out of real estate jail. Another prohibited act is making false promises. And you can see these are followed with the general statute. This is license law. General statute is license law. So we are prohibited from making false promises. Anything that's gonna trying to induce or persuade somebody to make a decision. Don't make promises you're not gonna keep. If I were gonna rent out this room, and let's say you come by this afternoon to see if you wanna rent this room, and you're looking at it and you're going, well, this is a nice room, Julie, but I really don't like the color of the paint. I don't like, all right, I'll tell you what. If you rent this room, I'll repaint it for you. How about that? And you say, sounds good. Where do I sign? Sign a document. You show up on moving day. Guess what color the room is? This color. I haven't done anything to it. I just made you a false promise to get you to sign that lease agreement, right? And that's something we need to avoid. If you make promises to people, just follow through with them. If you don't intend to follow through, then don't make those promises. I think similar to this, somebody asks you a question and you say, I don't know, let me get back to you. I think that could, if you don't get back to them, I think that could also be considered. I mean, you don't say, I promise I'll get back to you, but you're given the impression that you're going to follow up and follow through. So if you don't intend to get back to them, then just say, I don't know. And I mean, stop talking. Sometimes the less we say, the better. Any other misrepresentation throughout the transaction, false promises, etc., our advertising, MLS advertising. Again, there's a couple examples here. A big prohibited act is a conflict of interest. And they provide us with some samples. Probably the biggest one is undisclosed dual agency. Remember with dual agency, and you guys are going to talk a lot more about dual agency in 301, but with dual agency, it requires, it's intentionally created with informed written consent. Dual agency doesn't just happen. The parties have to agree to allow you to be a dual agent or allow the firm to be a dual agent. I think the biggest scenario where undisclosed dual agency happens is when a buyer comes into an open house. The person holding the open house works for the listing firm. Maybe they are the listing agent, maybe they're not. Maybe they're a new agent trying to get started and they're offering to do open houses for top producers. But we all work with the same firm, yes? And dual agency is one firm, two clients, one transaction. So you're holding the open house, buyers come in and start asking a lot of questions, and you answer their questions, acting like you have their best interest and lead them to believe that you have their best interest. And now they're moving forward and writing it up. You're now working with both parties, and you never stopped and explained dual agency. You may briefly mention it when you're going over the buyer's agency agreement. Yeah, and we're going to do dual agency, so just let me have you initial here. That isn't how dual agency happens. It's intentionally created with informed written consent. So we need to make sure that we're having these conversations. I remember working with real estate agent disclosure that we looked at yesterday, making sure that we know, they know that we have a duty to both parties. Another conflict of interest is self-dealing. OLCAR, you guys study OLCAR in pre-licensing? Most of you probably did. If you didn't study OLCAR, you studied loads, which it all shakes out the same thing. But most of us, I think, are still doing OLCAR. And one piece of OLCAR says that I have my client's best interest above all others, including my own. So I need to act in my client's best interest. I got to avoid this conflict of interest. This example right here, I love this example for conflict of interest. I think it really brings it home. So you're getting ready for a listing appointment and you're doing your research. You go to register deeds and you go to the tax department, NCDOT, school boards, you check all the information. And when you're looking at the zoning, you happen to discover that there's a zoning amendment on the table. And you do a little bit more research and you learn that if this zoning amendment passes, it's going to greatly increase the value of the properties in this area. So you go to the listing appointment and you're talking to the seller, and it doesn't take you long to realize that the seller does not know about the zoning amendment. You then take this opportunity to tell the seller that you'll buy the property. You don't even have to go on the market. I'll buy the property, closing goes down, zoning amendment changes, value goes up, and you turn around and sell it for a profit. Is that self-dealing? Is that a conflict of interest? You bet. Because why? We always have a duty to disclose material facts. So once you find out about the zoning amendment, you have a duty to tell the seller, the potential buyers, right? Everybody that you come across. You can't keep that info. That would be an omission. You can't keep that information from yourself. Let's back up for a second. What if you go to this listing appointment and you're having the conversation with the seller and you quickly realize that the seller doesn't know about the zoning amendment, and you bring it up and you say, you know that this is a proposal on the table, and should this amendment pass, the values are going to increase. Now the seller looks at you and says, wow, I appreciate you sharing that with me. I can't wait. I have to sell now. Thank you for telling me, but I have to sell now. Have you disclosed? You did your part, right? You disclosed. You gave them the option. Now, can you offer to buy the house? Absolutely, because you gave them, you disclosed that, you gave them that option. Everybody see the difference? We need to give them the decision, give them the choices, let them have that information. Remember, we are fact finders. So we help them provide the facts for them to make that informed decision. Another conflict of interest, representing another broker without consent. Remember we said yesterday, full brokers can be dual affiliated. Full brokers can be affiliated with two firms as long as you have the permission of both brokers. So the example we gave yesterday was the full broker leaving company A and having a transaction on the table, joining company B. They may be dual affiliated at both firms until this transaction closes. So they can stay under the supervision, they can stay under this BIC just for this transaction. You know, another example, some firms will do residential and commercial, some firms just do residential, some firms just do commercial. So let's say you're affiliated with a firm, you're a full broker, you're affiliated with a firm that just does residential, and later down the road, you decide you want to dabble in commercial. Could you affiliate with the residential firm and the commercial firm? Could you affiliate with both? Sure, as long as you have the consent of both brokers. You would need permission of both brokers to do both. Questions or comments on that? Property management, residential could be another good example. Another prohibited act is improper brokerage commission. As we have said, we cannot pay an unlicensed person for acts or services required for brokerage activities, required for brokers. It's probably the biggest violation of improper brokerage commission is paying an unlicensed person a commission. Your unlicensed employees are paid hourly or salary, or possibly even a la carte. I'll pay you X amount to put my listing in MLS. I'll pay you X amount to go put a yard sign in the front yard, but they're paid for the job. So if you hire a personal assistant for 12 hours a week, and that personal assistant is unlicensed, you pay them for 12 hours a week, regardless if you had a closing that week or not. You cannot pay them a commission transaction basis. It's hourly or salary. Another prohibited act here is acting unworthy and incompetent. This is where I think the cussing consumers out would fall under this category. Any act that doesn't show that we're acting professional. It gives us some examples here. I think this is a big one. Failure to properly complete the contract forms, the agency agreement forms. Remember, our job is just to fill in the blank, but those blanks are asking for a very specific thing. Just because we see a blank doesn't mean that we can put any old thing in there. Failure to act with reasonable skill, care, and diligence. Failure to provide, help provide accurate closing disclosure, closing information. All that would fall under acting unworthy or incompetent. Improper dealing covers improper, fraudulent, or dishonest dealing. Again, we never have a reason to lie. They take all the fun out of it, don't they? We can't lie, we can't cheat, we can't steal. What can we do? So we have to act proper. We can't act fraudulent. Discriminatory practices. This specifically says state fair housing, but know that a violation of state fair housing is also a violation of federal fair housing. We're going to talk a little bit more about fair housing next weekend. We'll have a conversation and get a reminder of our protected classes. Any violation, again, specifically this mentions state, but any violation of state fair housing will land in a disciplinary action in addition to whatever procedures the state, remedies the state chooses to take. Another prohibited act is the practice of law. Guys, we cannot draft legally binding documents for other parties. Only the parties to the contract can draft, alter, amend. So technically, can the buyer and seller change verbiage in the offer to purchase and contract? Technically, can they? Yeah, because they're the parties to the contract. Should they? Probably not. Probably not. When it comes to changing verbiage in these pre-printed forms that we have, I always kind of think of the domino effect. Like if you cross out this provision, how does it affect future provisions later in the contract? How does it affect other terms of the contract? So whenever your buyer or seller are threatening to whip out their red pen and add or delete, our job is to highly recommend that they talk to an attorney, because that attorney can explain those legal ramifications of making this change or making this addition. We get asked a lot. Has anybody been asked yet? Can you change this? Can you alter this? And it's that the consumer doesn't know. And truth is, I'm a heck of a lot cheaper than an attorney. So if they want a quick form drafted up, I feel like we get asked this a lot, which is again why the commission, do y'all feel like you're being harped on this? Don't draft, because I think it comes up a lot where the buyer or seller want us, even at their instruction, I still can't alter, delete, add. So this is why we go on and on and on about this in pre and post, is because we need to understand that when we are asked to change this or add that, can't you just add this one sentence? No, it's just one sentence, but it's still drafting a legally binding document. I also feel the need to say, because I saw this in a disciplinary action not too long ago, this not only applies to our sales contract, but this is the addenda and the amendments that go with it. All those forms from NCAR that we're allowed to use, we can't add, alter. All we do is fill in the blanks. Also under this category is offering a legal opinion, maybe a legal opinion on the title, the validity of the title. That's the attorney's job. Let them do their job. Yes, we can do the public search. Yes, we can find everything that the attorney can. If you really wanted to, you could, but we cannot offer our opinion. We cannot offer our legal title. And I go back to saying, let the attorney do their job. They know what they're looking for. If there's any questions, if there's any concern about maybe a seller's title, before we even list it, the seller should be encouraged to have an attorney look at it. I would rather know now if we're going to have problems than find out when we're under contract. So if there's any concerns or any issues, your seller can hire an attorney before we ever list it. You guys with me? Please don't say stuff like, oh, we'll just get it on the market and we'll figure it out once it goes under contract. Encourage your seller. We can get to the bottom of this and clear anything up. Deaths and probate get nasty. Divorces can get nasty. Sometimes these titles can just get nasty. And again, if there's a concern, let's address it now. Anybody had a seller have a title looked at before listing or anything yet? You guys come across this yet? I think we're hearing about this more and more. I had a coworker once, and she's a really good agent. She was getting ready for a listing appointment. And so she was doing her research, man. She was going to all the sites and learning as much about the property she possibly could. And the conversations that she'd been having on the phone with the seller had been to we'll call her Jennifer. And Jennifer had always referred to my husband, and I. So my agent pulls the deed and sees like Jennifer and Matt, for example, on the deed. So she assumes the seller's Matt. What happens when we assume? So she assumes, so she gets ready. She goes to the house. Jennifer opens the door and says, "This is my husband, Steve." And my agent said, "Who the heck is Steve?" She said, "Well, Steve is my husband." She said, "Okay, well, who is Matt?" She said, "Matt's my ex-husband." Evidently, the divorce attorney never filed the new deed, never separated Jennifer from Matt on the deed. That doesn't matter though, because what does the current deed say? Jennifer and Matt. Jennifer's remarried. So now we got Steve involved because North Carolina is a spousal state, right? So now Steve's involved by default. Oh yeah, and by this point, Matt was remarried now too. My agent said, y'all need to figure this out. You guys have got to get this straight before I list you property. And then they got upset with her because she wouldn't stay and take pictures and measure. She's like, I'm not doing anything until you guys get this worked out. Because what's a good buyer's attorney going to find? He's going to find the same thing too. And he's going to say, where are the new spouses? We need them involved. And these people had no clue why this was a big deal. What's the problem? Just list the house, they said. Thank God she was a good agent. She knows her stuff. Could you imagine how ugly that could have turned? How fast? Isn't that crazy? Also, under practice of law, we can't offer any legal advice. If you're working with unmarried buyers, do they take Tennessee in common or joint tenancy? That's not really up for me to discuss with them, is it? If they're unmarried buyers, we need to have them have a conversation with the attorney. Let the attorney explain the difference in Tennessee in common and joint tenancy. I'm pretty sure that conversation comes down to when one of you passes away, what do you want to have happen to your interest? Do you want it to go to the other or go to your heirs? But guys, it's not our job to whip out our pre-licensing textbook and say, well, this is what joint tenancy says, and this is what Tennessee in common says. Our job is to provide the buyers to the attorney, let the attorney explain how they can legally take title. Another prohibited act, they have this kind of these other catch-alls. So one catch-all is violating any commission rule. I'll probably show you guys again before we're done next Sunday where you guys can find the current license law and commission rule. Because if there's any question or ever concern, you need to know where to access this information. So I'll probably show you that a few more times before we're done. And then there's this other for prohibited acts. Hopefully y'all didn't lie on your application to get your license. Hopefully you were truthful on that application. If they find out that you lied, they consider that fraud and they'll revoke your license. They'll flat out just take it back, pretend like it never existed. How do they find out you lie? It doesn't matter. If they find out you lie, there was an agent, gosh, 7 years ago in Greensboro, lost his license. They found out that he lied. And I don't know what lie he made, but they found out that he lied on his application to get his license. Y'all want to know how they found out? Because his ex-girlfriend reported him. Soon as they broke up, she picked up the phone and called the real estate commission. Ain't that something? He lost his license, got him revoked. He will never have a real estate license again. Don't lie. That's pretty simple. If you've been convicted of a crime, we talked about this, misdemeanor or felony, you need to report that. Anybody remember how many days? How many days do we have to report that conviction? See you coming in the chat. Yep, 60 days. So once you're convicted, you have 60 days to report it. What are they going to do to you once you're convicted? I can't answer that. I think bottom line, it's going to come down to how badly did your conviction harm my public? I do know if you don't report it, you will get a disciplinary action because the rule says we report any convictions, convicted misdemeanors or felonies within 60 days. If your unlicensed employee does an activity that's considered a brokerage activity, if you are their employing broker, you are responsible for your unlicensed employee. So again, that assistant you get for 12 hours a week, it's your responsibility to make sure that they are performing duties, non-brokerage duties. That's your job. So any mishandling of an unlicensed employee would be a prohibited act. And also if you have another professional license, so specifically they rattle off appraisal, attorney, home inspector, mortgage broker, general contractor, or another licensed professional occupation. If you get in trouble with that other licensing board, you have to report it to the commission also within 60 days. So if you have another professional license, everybody good with that? You get yourself in trouble with that other professional license, you've got to report it to the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. Nabila, I know you're licensed in New Jersey. Sabrina, I think we said yesterday, you may get your license in Virginia one day. If you get in trouble with the New Jersey Real Estate Commission, you got to report that to North Carolina. I'm not suggesting that you will, but Sabrina, if you get in trouble with the Virginia Real Estate Commission, you got to report that to the North Carolina. That's considered another professional license if you're licensed in another state. Again, what are they going to do to you? I don't know. I'm not the real estate commission. I can't answer that. I do know there's disciplinary action if you don't report it. Questions or comments on these prohibited acts? I hope a lot of these make sense. I hope you guys aren't sitting here going, oh man, I can't act unworthy or incompetent. I hope a lot of these just kind of make sense. And if it doesn't feel right in your gut, then it's probably not right. Right? Again, I got these are just the pages from, up here I have the entire license law and commission rule. And what I have down here in the Campbell folder is just these pages that discuss the prohibited acts. And specifically, I highlighted the specific acts, so you have that information in the rules here. Questions or comments? We got a few more prohibited acts to talk about. We'll do that when we get back from break. Everybody good? Good stuff. All right, let's take 10. What do we got? 10:52. So we'll come back at 11:03 and talk about some more things we're not allowed to do. All right, welcome back. Most of specifically the prohibited acts discussed in the syllabus, the ones that we're going to focus on, most of those were covered in that comment section that we just looked at with the highlights, but there are a few, so we need to go back and make sure that we pick up what we need to cover. So the rest of the prohibited acts, I think we're going to see kind of revolve around trust accounts. Remember, the commission's main purpose is to protect the public. And when you mishandle the public's money, when you mishandle the public's earnest money or security deposit, the commission's going to consider that as a violation. So failure to account for trust funds. One of the videos that we watched yesterday about the trust account mentioned, your bank statement comes out like once a month, right? So that would be your opportunity to sit down, reconcile your trust account, make sure that it matches the money's accounted for. You can't just deposit the money. You have to say this is in your records, earnest money deposit for 123 Main Street from buyer, B and seller S, specifically what the money's for and who's it for. We talked yesterday about commingling of funds. Your money does not belong in the trust account. Money from the trust account doesn't belong in your operating account. So we've got to keep those separate. Remember, the only exception to this rule is if your bank charges a monthly fee. And if they charge a monthly fee, you can have up to $100 of your money at a time. So as that $100 deplenishes, you can add back up, but no more than $100 of your own money at a time. Failure to timely deliver offers and sales contracts. Who can remind me, how many days do I have to deliver an instrument? How many days to deliver an instrument? You guys show me your hands. Yep, 3 days. So that 3-day clock starts once the document's been executed. So you get your buyer or seller to sign the agency agreement. We have 3 days to send them a copy of that agency agreement. Buyer or seller go under contract. We have 3 days to get them a copy of that contract. And again, that applies to closing paperwork. I think the misconception with that one is that some agents think they're going to wait until the very end of the transaction and send everything all at once. But the commission rule says we send everything within 3 days of execution. I think a good rule of thumb, if they sign it, they deserve a copy of it. Doesn't that make sense? So once they sign something, and guys, it doesn't take that much. It's as simple as sending an email with a PDF attachment. Here's our signed agency agreement. I look forward to working with you. Talk to you tomorrow. Remember, we're documenting everything. Document the the sent email, because that shows the date and timestamp. You guys know you can go into your sent file and label it for your transaction file, right? You can go into your sent and you can tag it for your transaction file. And that way you show the date and the time that you sent it in the attached PDF anytime they sign anything. Remember, we keep all that for 3 years. I think we're pretty good with that. And then the other prohibited act not mentioned is our responsibility for the closing statement and the accuracy of the numbers that we can verify. I think it's really important that we understand that I'm not responsible for verifying the accuracy of all of the numbers on the closing disclosure, but I am responsible for verifying the accuracy of the numbers that I can verify. So when the paralegal sends you that closing disclosure before settlement, the first thing you should do is pull out the offer to purchase and contract. Make sure the sales price is right, due diligence, earnest money, any negotiated seller pay closing costs. Were there any amendments once we went under contract? Did the purchase price change? Did any of those numbers change? If we receive invoices from other parties, like for example, the home inspector that's going to get paid at settlement, we have a duty to make sure that the home inspector's invoice, the home inspector's number is on there to make sure that they do get paid. So we have a duty. We know how to prorate taxes. We know how to calculate interim interest. If you haven't yet, you'll take 302 and you'll learn all about that. So we have the duty to verify these numbers. Make sure everything just adds up. Just add. Pull out your calculator and add. I'm trying to think of a polite way to say this. Mistakes are common. Mistakes happen. We're all human. We all make mistakes. First closing statement didn't have commission on it. That's a mistake, isn't it? Thank God you reviewed it. Who knows what could have happened? I'm not trying to say anything. You know, we're all human, guys. We all make mistakes. And the thinking behind this is that the more sets of eyes we have on that closing disclosure, the better chance for accuracy that we have. When you find a mistake, you have to report it. You've got to call the paralegal or the lender and say, don't be mean about it. You just say, I don't think these numbers, where did you get this? Or I don't think these adds up, or let's talk about this. You don't have to be mean about it. Comments on that? I'm still trying to think of a polite way to put this. I think mistakes happen more frequently than what I ever realized. How's that? That's why we have a duty to verify. Chastity, I had one too, where there no commission. I was the listing agent and I was reviewing the seller's CD, and the buyer's agent name was Mike. And I called the paralegal. I said, Mike and I want to get paid. And she said, oopsie. We have no problem calling out that mistake. So we don't have a problem with calling out any other mistake, right?
I think that what you said is, I think these mistakes are common. I don't think to date I've had any of them be accurate the first time around.
There are few that we come across that we don't have to call and get, even if it's a spelling of somebody's name. I mean, you know, look at everything. And you know, so the paralegals have a program, right? And they put the data in and it beep, boop, boop, and it calculates on the closing. So they're not actually doing the closing disclosure. And I don't know if things get lost in transaction, if it's, you know, something with the system, if it's just data entry error, maybe we transpose the numbers or something. But it's just really important that I don't know if any of your firms have a contract to closing coordinator. Maybe a couple of you do. A couple of you do. That may be part of their responsibility as well. But as the agent, I don't think it hurts for you to put your eyes on it, just to make sure. I think we owe that to our clients for sure. Any questions or comments about the prohibited acts, the things that, again, I'm not saying you are going to get in trouble, but the things that will get you in a disciplinary action? For starters. So there's a couple, before we talk about kind of what happens if you do get the letter of inquiry, there's some videos. First video we're going to watch is actually a video for the consumer. So there's a video for the consumers about what do you do if you want to file a complaint. So we're going to watch that one first, and then we're going to watch the complaint video from the commission for us kind of explaining the process. So the first video is loading under consumers.
Charlie. Oh, you look down. I thought you'd be thrilled about your new house.
I am. The house is great, but I just found out that my real estate broker didn't tell me the important information I needed to know before I made the purchase. I don't know what to do.
That's too bad. I had something similar happen to me once. I remember feeling really helpless. But then I called the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. I was able to file a complaint with them.
How could I file a complaint?
It's easy. There's a complaint form on the commission's website. You can put it in writing there. Make sure to include the names of any brokers or firms involved, the names and contact information for any witnesses, a description of the events, and then any documents you may have that are relevant to it.
What can the Real Estate Commission take a complaint on?
Oh, lots of things. A broker omitting facts, mishandling trust money, a failure to present an offer, making false promises, representing a party without a written agency agreement, or practicing without a license.
What can the Real Estate Commission do for me? I mean, can they get me money, or can they undo the transaction?
No. To undo a transaction to get money, you need to contact your own attorney. At the same time, you should file a complaint with the commission. They'll investigate the complaint. And if they find sufficient evidence of a violation by a broker, they may reprimand, suspend, or even revoke that broker's license. And they can provide information about where to go for additional help.
Thanks, Sally. I feel a lot better. I'll contact the Real Estate Commission today.
Okay, so that was for the consumer. I guess my only complaint about that video, she sure is chipper about filing a complaint, and she, I guess that's the only thing about that video. She's just awfully. All right, so the second one we have is the complaint process, and we'll talk about this one after we watch the video, once it loads.
Oh no! You've received a letter of inquiry from the Commission enclosing a complaint against you as a broker. What should you do? First of all, take a deep breath and read the letter of inquiry carefully. Included with the letter is a copy of the complaint or whatever document caused the inquiry file to be opened, and any attachments the Commission received from the complainant. Review those as well. Now what? As a broker, if you receive a letter of inquiry, Commission rules require that you respond within 14 days of receipt. If you need more time, just call the staff person who signed your letter. He or she will give you plenty of time to prepare your response. How should you prepare your response? Review your transaction file and consider the complaint as objectively as you can. Write an overview of the transaction and respond to each of the specific questions in the letter you received. Should you consult an attorney? That is certainly your right. At this point, no judgment has been made and no decision has been reached. The Commission staff just wants to know both sides of the story. You can hire an attorney to help you with that, or at any other time during the investigation process or thereafter. Gather your thoughts and the relevant documents. Think about who else might be able to shed light on what happened. For example, your broker in charge, an inspector, or a closing attorney might have additional information about the transaction that could help. Reread the letter of inquiry to see what you've been asked to provide. Be sure to include all the requested documents with your response. Sometimes this will be particular information. Other times, it will be a copy of your entire file. If you aren't sure what is needed, give the case processor a call. He or she would much rather answer your questions than have to send you multiple requests for the same information. Even if you talk to the case processor, you must still file a written response. Be aware that a copy of whatever you send may go to the complaining witness and will become public record. So don't ask that something be kept confidential. If you are concerned that some records contain confidential information, call the case processor who can discuss your concerns with you. Send your written response and copies of the requested documents to the case processor before the deadline or extension. If you send your response on paper, avoid staples. And don't worry about putting the documents into notebooks or special binders. That's not necessary. The processor will review your initial response and the related documents. He or she may have follow-up questions for you and others involved in the transaction. After the processor is satisfied that the investigation is complete, there are a couple of possible outcomes. If there isn't sufficient evidence of a violation to warrant discipline, the file will be closed without further action. The case processor may have a suggestion about how to avoid future complaints. If there is evidence of a violation that might warrant some action, the Real Estate Commission members will decide whether the case should go to a hearing. Don't contact Commission members about a case. The Commission's decision is based upon a summary of the facts of the case. The identity of the parties is not included in the summary. Both you and the complaining witness will be notified of the Commission's decision in writing. If the Commission orders a hearing, you will then have time to talk to the Commission attorney handling your case about what happens next and possible ways to settle the case. As always, you have the right to consult a lawyer. If the Commission finds that no hearing is necessary, you're done and the case is closed. Remember that the Commission routinely receives between 800 and 1,000 complaints each year, and about 10% of those go to a hearing. Your best opportunity to make sure that no hearing is called against you is to represent your clients in accordance with the law. Make no misrepresentations, keep good records to verify your conduct, and promptly, fully, and honestly answer the questions presented in the initial letter of inquiry. For more information, contact the Commission at 919-875-3700 or find us online at ncrec.gov.
All right, so let's kind of go and break down what he said again, going through the process, what to do if it happens again. The first thing, y'all, don't get excited. Just take a few minutes, breathe. If you know me, I'm a big fan of breathing, big deep breath. So just take a few minutes, talk to, get with your BIC, try to, just get through it best you can. It is what it is, and you got to deal with it. So first off, let's understand that the Commission has the authority to investigate any complaint. So once the consumer hits file a complaint, then the Commission has the right to investigate it. They may also, based on a complaint, launch another investigation. So in other words, if you have a complaint, they may say, okay, well, we need to see the documents from this transaction. But while we're here, let's look at your working with real estate agent disclosures from 2021, right? So once that opens the door for them, then they very well may ask to see other stuff, especially if they have a question or concern about whether or not you're properly handling your working with real estate agent disclosure. The complaint that the Commission can investigate can be received by a complainant, and any person can click on that button. Again, just because they click on the button doesn't mean you're going to get the letter of inquiry. Once they click on the button, the Commission first determines whether or not a complaint or violation has happened, whether or not a complaint is warranted. If the consumer hires an attorney, they can also launch a complaint that way as well. So the consumer, you guys remember, the Commission can't fine you. So the Commission just regulates your license, but the attorney, the court, can fine you. So depending on where the consumer starts, As he just said in the video, there's about 800 to 1,000 complaints annually, and I'm not sure how old that video is. I feel like that video might be a little dated because he was talking about mailing paperwork in. I'm pretty sure now the only way to respond is via email, especially since I learned a couple months ago of a letter of inquiry that came out via email. So I don't think they're even mailing the letter of inquiry anymore. I think it's all going to be handled electronically, but you have the option to respond. Your letter will tell you how they want you to respond. And did you guys hear him say that of the complaints filed annually, only 10% are brought to a hearing? I mean, that's such a small number. Again, guys, I think Yelp has made us all online critics. And a lot of the consumers think that they are, you know, voicing their concern. And again, the commission's got to determine if it's warranted or not. Again, if it's warranted, then the investigation starts, you get the letter of inquiry. If you're found guilty of doing whatever you're accused of, they can take disciplinary action. We'll talk about that in just a second. Maybe they suspend your license for a certain period of time. Maybe they revoke them, flat out take them back. Maybe they just give you a slap on the wrist and say, don't do it again. Everyone is handled on a case-by-case basis. I get asked all the time, well, what happens if I do this? What happens if I do? There is no across the board because they got to take everything into consideration. And since every transaction is so unique, every complaint is going to be unique as well. They may issue a subpoena. Again, that would be the courts issuing a subpoena. They may impose a sanction. They could put a, oh, I just lost the word. It's gone. Like a legal stop, like they could prevent you from doing brokerage activities until they get to the bottom of this investigation, until they learn whether or not, what's that word I want? The legal stop. What's it called?
Injunction.
Injunction. Thank you. Thank you. It just flew away. So they could put an injunction on you. Thank you. And say, okay, no brokerage activities until we get to the bottom of this. The other thing I hope you guys heard is that any point in the process, may it be from the day you get the letter of inquiry to the day you're called to a Zoom meeting to stand in front of the commissioners to state your case, you are welcome at any time to hire your own attorney. You are always welcome to have your own representation. So at any point, you can consult with an attorney. So what happens when the brown letter, the dreaded brown envelope appears, or the dreaded email, I guess we need to start calling it. When you first get it, it's not good, and you may utter some bad 4-letter words. You may cry a little bit. You know, you may have a response, and that's okay. I think that's natural because it's not a good thing, right? It's not bad, but it's not good. So I think, you know, go ahead and get it out of your system, and then just sit down and read the letter, read the complaint, read it again, start forming in your mind, what are they asking you for? What documentation are they asking you for? And what documentation can you provide? You can provide things that they may not necessarily request. So things that you can do to state your case. This is your opportunity to tell your side of the story. That's all they're asking you to do with this letter of inquiry. Is everybody good with that? Game's not over yet. They're just asking you to state your case, share your side of the story. But think first before you respond. Remember, we talked earlier about not sending emails, angry, not sending emails until you're ready. This would be a great time to form your email on a blank Word document so you don't actually send that response, your first initial response to the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. I can see that not going over well. Most of the time, that doesn't end in, they said only 10% of cases takes to a hearing. I'd be interested of how many of those don't even become an investigation. You respond, you say, here's my documentation, here's my proof. Every single letter of inquiry I've ever seen from other agents has always come back with, thank you for your cooperation. This matter has been closed. because the agents have had the proper documentation. So hopefully that's as far as it'll go. Once you respond, if they need more information, they'll ask you. Just comply with them. Just comply with them and get them the information that they're requesting. Regulatory Affairs is the department that you would be dealing with. They don't make assumptions. They're not accusing you of anything. Again, they're asking for your response. They're just gathering the facts. So once you get that letter of inquiry, you typically have 14 days to respond. As the gentleman in the video said, if you need more, just call your person at Regulatory Affairs. They're willing to work with you, but you've got to communicate with them. And you need to make all records available, not just those that they're requesting, but any other documentation you may have that may state your case. And again, if they say, hey, while we're here, let's look at all your 2021 agency agreements, just comply with them, get them the information that they need. Thank you. I had a coworker, another one, that got a letter of inquiry. And it was, she was working with the seller, and the complaint but came from the buyer that was represented by another agent. And the buyer didn't feel that my coworker, the listing agent, was treating the buyer fairly. My coworker was acting accordingly to her seller's instructions. She was following her principal's instructions. And it was just the buyer that felt like they weren't being treated unfair. Like, you know, they weren't not being treated unfair, but they felt that they were. And in her response, she got a letter from her seller. The letter from her seller said, yes, I told her to do this and this. So she had the proof that she was just following her principal's instructions. That's what we're supposed to do. Goodness, we've seen this a couple times, haven't we? We have to report any felony or misdemeanor conviction, disciplinary action. Anybody a notary? Anybody a notary? A couple of you? Yeah, if you get yourself in trouble with your notarial commission, you need to report that as well. We said within how many days? 60. Everybody good with that? So again, you get this letter, you're going to want to just shoot something out, right? You just get it out of your system. Maybe you got the little devil and angel sitting on the other side of you telling you, you know, what you should or should not do, what you should or should not say. But you don't want a smart aleck response. You don't want an unprofessional response. Don't cuss in your response to the real estate commission. And then when you're creating your response, again, review the letter of inquiry, read it a couple times, review the file. What documents are they asking for? Are they requesting specifically? Are they just saying, send me the whole file? Are they just saying, send me your agency disclosure and your agency agreement? Is there anything else that you have? Like, again, you're identifying witness, the case with my coworker, she had the seller, her principal write a letter saying, this is what I told her to do. So take time to craft your response, to come up with your response. You know, you get 14 days to think it through. Make sure you have everything. Don't forget to add your attachments. You don't want to say attached is this, this, and this, and then forget to attach it. So just take time with it, be patient with it, and kind of go through the process step by step from the letter, specifically about what they're asking for, what they're wanting to address. Typically, the most severe penalties that the commission reports is any violation of the trust account. Again, a violation of the trust account is mishandling the public's money. And that is a big no-no at the commission. Criminal activities, again, if you get yourself in trouble, it doesn't mean you're going to face disciplinary action. Bottom line is going to come down to the commission's going to ask, how badly did they harm my public? Misrepresentations kind of just depends. Again, how badly did you harm my public? Was it intentional? When we talked in pre-licensing about willful misrepresentation and negligent misrepresentation, willful means you did it on purpose. Negligent means it was an accident. You know, we're all human. Our commissioners are human. So we all make mistakes. Once we learn of a mistake, just correct it. Make sure you can notify the parties to correct it. But if you do something intentionally, if you do something willfully, I imagine that's going to come down a little bit harder than an accident. Engaging in brokerage with an inactive or expired license can result in a suspension. Remember, we said yesterday, if you wake up on July 1st and your license is inactive because you didn't do your education, or it's expired because you didn't pay the fee, you've got to stop brokerage activities immediately. Even if you say, well, this is closing tomorrow, so I'm going to finish this out real quick. You got to stop immediately. If you don't, then you could have your license suspended. Failure to report your criminal convictions will get your license suspended. And then just failure to respond to the letter of inquiry. Don't ignore that thing. It doesn't just go away. So you have to respond to it. Failure to respond, unwillingness to cooperate, they would absolutely frown on that as well. You do also have the opportunity to just surrender your license. So if the letter of inquiry comes in, you don't have to go through the process. You can just kind of throw your hands up and turn your license over. I guess find another career because you wouldn't be doing brokerage activities in real estate anymore. I do see suspensions or surrender license in the disciplinary action, the bulletins. We'll look at those bulletins in just a second. So I do see where agents just surrender their license.
Can you still, if your license are revoked, can you take another occupation within a real estate firm?
It would be as an unlicensed.
Unlicensed. Okay.
Yeah. So you could get hired as an unlicensed employee. Yeah, but you couldn't do any brokerage activities.
Right. Okay.
Yep. Yep. Good question. So yeah, your real estate career may not be over. It just may have to shift, right? No more sales or anything that would require a license. Have you guys been getting the monthly bulletin? Real Estate Commission emails a monthly bulletin. Man, they come out, they're spot on. You've got it. They say the first, but here lately we've been getting them the day before. A couple of you said no. If you're not getting them, then what I recommend you do, first off, check your spam. Sometimes new emails may wind up in your spam, but what you may want to consider doing is going into your licensee login and make sure your email address in there is correct. Make sure it's in there. The private email is how the commission communicates with you. So make sure that email address is right. If you're still not getting it, then I would just call the commission. Be like, look, I checked spam, it's in here. Because I think the bulletins are really important to get. If you've not gotten them, then you know, we got some updates here. Obviously, we haven't hit July yet. But I think there's just good stuff in this e-bulletin. Anyway, this is the commission's opportunity to kind of share with all of us across the state. Here lately, this is new. They've been telling us who our commissioners are. And I like this because I think it's important that we know their names at least, you know. And then there's, you know, featured articles like here, they're talking about the renewal period. Typically things that we're dealing with right now. A couple months ago, it was high due diligence fees. They wrote an article for us on that and how we can address that with our buyers. Escalation clauses. I don't know if you guys are familiar with these, but basically what an escalation clause says is that my buyer's offering $100,000, but they're willing to go up to 120 if need be to match an offer. So they're not really setting the purchase price, but they're setting a step up if need be. So there's been concerns about how these escalation clauses have been handled. So they addressed it. Employment opportunities. If you want to go work for the Real Estate Commission, they almost always have a job opening available. Where I always look, a couple things other than the main articles here, but of course the disciplinary actions, I look at these as knowing not what to do. You know what I'm saying? Like what gets other people, because that kind of helps me know what to do, what not to do. And I think this person, yeah, this person surrendered their license. So I think I see that, and I'm seeing that more and more and more. Honestly, I'm surprised that there's only one this month. It must have been a slow month. But as the disciplinary action happens, then they will publish these. This is on the public site. I also recently learned that they publish it in the local newspaper as well. So to me, that's the worst part about a disciplinary action, is seeing your name and city and what you did slapped up on the website and on the newspaper. So if this isn't worth it right here to you, I don't know. I never want to see that say Julie Yates Campbell, by the way. I don't. I live my life to stay off of this page. And you probably will at some point in your career see somebody that you know. It's bound to happen, right? It's a small world. It's a small game. The other thing for me personally that I like to look at monthly, the commission calendar, but I like the licensee count, because I've been noticing 126,000 plus total licensees. Of those, 110, let's see, 77 and 6. So what, 81,000 active licensees. I've been noticing trends lately of those numbers going up. So we're seeing more and more people getting licensed. That's more competition for us. Yes. It's very competitive out there right now. Somebody recently said you can't walk outside and throw a rock and not hit 3 agents. So it's safe to say that everybody you know knows multiple agents. So don't just assume that they're going to call you because they know you. It's competitive out there. Keep in front of your center of influence. Let your friends and family remind them periodically that you have your license. But that's just a trend I've been noticing, and these numbers going up and up and up. Again, if you're not getting the bulletin, or if you are getting the bulletin and you're not paying attention to it, I think it's a great resource, and it's the opportunity for the commission to communicate with all 100-something of us. Comments? So let's talk with the disciplinary action in the process. Let's talk about the BIC's responsibility for all agents, and then we'll kind of break it down, or for the full broker, and then the BIC's responsibility for the PB. Because the question is, if I get in trouble, will my BIC get in trouble? As a provisional broker, if you get the letter of inquiry, your broker in charge will too. Period, end of story. As a full broker, if you get the letter of inquiry, it depends on if your BIC will get that letter as well. The BIC's responsibility and liability for the full broker, they always refer to it as 3 A's and 2 T's. The BIC's responsibility for the full broker is agency disclosures and agreements, maintaining an active and current license, or ensuring that their brokers are maintaining an active and current license, advertising by the firm. The BIC's responsible for trust account, and the BIC is responsible for the firm's transactional files. So as a full broker, if your complaint revolves around any of these 3 A's and 2 T's, then your BIC will get a letter of inquiry as well. Maybe they will be asked to respond. Maybe they're just FYI-ing them. Hopefully your BIC will be willing to work with you and help you get through this. Your BIC may even see this as an opportunity for a training moment. If the complaint comes in and we find out that you're working with real estate agent disclosure wasn't handled properly, hopefully the BIC sees that as an opportunity to revisit that and offer some training for the firm. When it comes to the BIC's liability for the provisional broker, the BIC is fully accountable for actions of the affiliated PB. Remember, the BIC or the PB, the BIC is fully responsible for the supervision of the actions of the provisional broker. You know, before BICs and firms take on PBs, they need to ask themselves questions like, am I available to offer not just training, but for the provisional broker, am I available, or can I send a trusted agent for, you know, listing appointments, buyer consultations, meeting the home inspector, measuring a house? Anytime you do anything like that as a PB, your BIC should be around and they should be coaching. I think some supervise more closely than others. I worked with a lady once. She was a broker in charge, and right outside her office, she had a set of cubicles in the room. She called it her PB pin. So she put all her provisional brokers in the cubicles right outside of her office, so she could be there. They could easily pop into her office. She could walk across, you know, across a little walkway and say, hey, what's up? What are you working on? You know, what do you do? And she was very much so involved. As soon as you dropped your provisional status, you had to move out of the PB pin. You were gone. You went somewhere else in the office, maybe your own office or another cubicle, but she had all of her PBs nice and close to her. Unfortunately, I've also heard stories over the years about some BICs that don't supervise that closely. Some BICs that kind of handle it as a, well, your license, figure it out. You know, I will say that at the last educators conference in March, the commission said that they're starting to revisit specifically what the BIC's responsibilities are for PBs. So that absolutely is a conversation on the table. I'm hoping that we get young agents started on the right foot. We want you guys to get proper training up front so you don't mess up later. And the BIC should take a role in that. As we said earlier, if the provisional broker gets a complaint, then the broker in charge will as well. Comments on that? Do you guys get to shadow experienced agents? Did people come with you? What's your training experience? Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. Some firms, not all firms, I mean, my firm won't take on PBs because we just don't feel that we have the adequate training program in place. So if you call my firm as a PB, we're going to say, got some experience and call us back in a couple years. You know, we want to offer ongoing training, and we do regularly, but just what we feel would be necessary to properly work with the provisional broker. So again, will the BIC be notified? Will the BIC get the brown envelope? If the provisional broker, yes, the BIC will also get the brown envelope, letter of inquiry. If it's a full broker, it just depends. One thing the BIC may want to consider, and for those of you that want to be a BIC one day, one thing you may want to consider is having a written office policy, part of your firm procedures, that any affiliated broker that receives the letter of inquiry contacts you, lets you know. So you make that a firm policy. Again, they can help you. They can help you work through it. My firm, I think most real estate firms have errors and omissions insurance rolled into our fees that we pay. E&O insurance, think of it as like medical malpractice. E&O insurance is there to protect us, not if we do something intentionally, you know, but if an accident happens, if something comes up that maybe we didn't know. So you may want to kind of visit and ask questions about your E&O policy. If you get the letter of inquiry, you may want to see if it's warranted to file for the E&O policy, and your BIC can help you with any of that, with all of that. And again, one thing that the letter of inquiry may do is it may alert the BIC to possible training needs. Hey, we got a complaint on not properly doing or throughout the process, it was discovered that the working with real estate agent disclosure wasn't properly handled. So this would be a good opportunity to do training for the whole firm, for the whole office, on making sure that we're properly disclosing our working with real estate agents. Use it as a coaching opportunity. Questions or comments? Anybody know anybody yet to get a letter of inquiry? Anybody in your firm? Not yet? You will. And it's okay. It's okay. Like I said, we're not in trouble yet. I think that's the biggest concern. You get that, oh no, I'm gonna lose my life. Not necessarily, just simmer down. Let's work through this, you know. They're just asking you for your side of the story. That's all it is. It's not the big scary thing, especially when you know you didn't do anything. Now, if you did, you know, I guess that's when you may want to surrender your license or consider that. It's up to you and where you see yourselves in the future. I'll never forget the day I was reading the disciplinary action. And sure enough, there was one of my pre-licensing students in there. I said, we talked about that. I said, what were you doing? His career did not last long. Can't break the rules, guys. Questions or comments do I have?
I have a question about, I've heard you mention several times about a education conference. But is there a conference here in North Carolina just for the realtors?
Not from the Real Estate Commission. There are other conferences, like your local board of realtors may put something on. NCAR, North Carolina Association of Realtors, does I think they do an annual conference. So I think there are opportunities. Most conferences are going to come from your firms. So some of you with big brands like Coldwell Banker and BHHS, you might have annual conferences, something like that. I know when I was with a big firm, they would go like West one year and then East another year. So they always tried to capture as many people. We got to go to Vegas one year as a team. That was a lot of fun. Oh yeah, and we learned a lot of stuff while we were there too. So, you know, I think they're out there. Again, in the conference I'm referring to, yeah, it's just from the Real Estate Commission, just for educators and directors of schools. They do that for us once a year. We used to be in person, now we're on Zoom. Maybe we'll be in person again soon. But I know there's training and education out there, various opportunities. Like I said, I would start honestly with your local board. Anybody taking advantage of training that your local board of realtors offers? I know Winston-Salem, they send something out once a week and they tell you about upcoming events, and y'all are paying those dues anyway. So if you're paying dues and you're not taking advantage of what they offer, what they provide, I mean, at some point you may stop and ask, well, what am I paying for? Well, if you're not taking advantage of them, then you're not taking advantage of those offerings. Winston-Salem Board of Realtors does a home inspection seminar, and it's like you go to a house and follow a home inspector, but they almost always do it on Tuesday mornings. And I'm teaching like every Tuesday morning out of the year. So I'm like, never, every time I'm like, oh, you know, so maybe one day I'll get to go. Chastity, did you get to do it? Was it fun?
Yeah, some colleagues and I have gone, and it was really good, especially for, you know, newer agents. I think that who don't have a lot of experience with home inspections, I think that it's really informative. It was really great.
And what they're looking for and what they, yeah, I would, one of these days, maybe I'll just have to call out sick one of these days, call out sick that morning. Maybe that's what I'll do.
Yeah, you learn the terms, you learn the language. It's just helpful.
Good, thank you. Anything else? Yeah.
Yep. Another question is about the school. instructors, what, if any, I guess special requirements, like what do you need to, if you wanted to open up a real estate school
So
or
there's
become an
law,
instructor? I
so
heard
there's
you
law and
mention.
rule on that, and I think a good place to start on the commission's homepage, they have this education tab. So here's an educate, well, let's see, instructor education and events. Let's see, what would you want to look for?
Yeah, I was
Okay,
just
maybe not here.
curious.
Yeah, but this is a good, but there's law and rule in your licensed law and commission rule about for schools and what's required for a school and that kind of thing. So it's within the licensed law and commission rule.
So as a full broker, never mind. Well, yeah, as a full broker, we're able to be an instructor.
Mhm.
Or are there any
You have to
other?
get approval, like you have to get approval from the commission to be an instructor. And I think these days maybe they're doing Zoom, I don't know, but you go through like a couple days. That's this, I think, this new instructor seminar, and you go through it like day, and then you have to get approval from the commission. You don't have to be a real estate license to be the director of a school. You can open a school and run a school and not be licensed. So, but yeah, there's I'll try to find the specific rules for you, but it's specific laws and rules about opening and operating your real estate, being an education provider. Anything else? You guys are so quiet today. All right, let's go ahead. We're gonna take a break. We're still gonna go to lunch, probably about 10:30, 1 o'clock, but let's go ahead and take a break since we're at the top of the hour. So let's go ahead and take 10, and then we'll come back and talk for a little bit more, and then we'll be ready for some lunch. So let's take right at 10. All right. Hopefully over lunch, you guys will get a chance to go outside. It's really nice. At least here, it's really nice today. Like, it's hard to believe it was 90 degrees. I think we're getting the weather that Sabrina had yesterday.
Even better this morning.
Yeah. You know, so without AC, we were able to sleep with some of the windows open last night and actually cooled everything down inside. So that's good. I worry about my appliances until we get this AC fixed. So that was nice. But don't get used to it, because what we got tomorrow and then Tuesday, we're going to be back up in the 90s. And I'm pretty sure that's when I'm going to check into Hampton Inn if I don't have a new AC unit by then. I think that's my plan. I hope my husband will come with me, but you know, it's rough. All right. Let's see. First off, let me answer your question. And by the way, Nabili, I want to get this right. Nabila. I do have a note. I know you asked yesterday about virtual offices, broker in charge and virtual offices, and I do still have my note. I'll have that for you next weekend. But with it being the weekend and everything, I don't want to bother anybody, you know, unless I need to. So I'll get that answered for you. In the meantime, you'd also asked about schools. Remember, the current license law and commission rule is always on the commission's homepage. So when you click on this link, it takes you to the link to license law and to the link to commission rule. So if we look first at license law, you can see all the different articles, and specifically Article 3 is about private real estate education providers and CE requirements. So there's a whole Article 3 on license law. And then also under commission rule, and this is a good opportunity for us to kind of see this anyway, because we need to know where to access the current information. So under commission rule, again, it's in sections, and the education section is, and sometimes you just have to search and hunt and peck, but the education section is subchapter H. So if you're interested in opening your own school, there's always a demand for good schools. The school's got to get approved. The instructor's got to get approved. It's a bunch of approval processes.
I can imagine.
And they want, I mean, for, you know, let's be honest, the reason I went into sales is because they said, if you want to teach for us, you need to have sales experience. I said, but I've been an admin for 15 years. And they say, well, you have their experience, but you don't have your own. I said, all right. And, you know, I'm not going to lie, I grumbled a little bit. But once I learned, I quickly realized what they were saying. Having your own experience, being able to have your own in the field experience absolutely is beneficial. So I'm glad they made me do it. All right. Again, license on commission rule. The comments, I have all this in Learn Test Pass for you guys, but one day we may not be together. So you need to know where to access this information. It's all on the homepage, all a great place to start. So we are moving right along. We'll do this one first little section, and then we'll be ready for lunch. Make for a shorter afternoon. So this next section, section 4, specialized types of real estate. So we're going to get off of residential just a bit. We're going to talk condos and townhomes. We're also going to talk a little bit of commercial. some things that might be newer concepts to you guys that we may not have gotten in pre-licensing. Let's face it, pre-licensing is heavy residential. So that's was the primary focus. I know we mentioned property management for a minute. We briefly mentioned the word commercial. So now hopefully we're getting you into some more of these niches, but it's still important that we realize that no matter what avenue you're going, further education is required. So that's part of what post-licensing is for. And hopefully you're seeking out your own education, absolutely taking advantage of various things offered through your firm, your local board of realtors, etc. So the first type of specialized real estate that we're going to discuss, we're going to talk about condos and townhomes, and specifically condos and townhomes in North Carolina, how they work here. Anybody live in a condo or townhome? Condo? Michelle? Nabila? Good. I have a condo. We bought this house almost 2 years ago. I bought my little condo when it was just me. It was a nice 1 bed, 1 bath. I was done with the roommate situation, right? So what better way to ensure you don't need a roommate than get a 1 bed, 1 bath? And I was just fine, skipping along life just fine until my husband crossed my path. So now here we are. So, we bought the house, and now I'm a landlord. So we have a tenant at the condo, and so far so good. Things are going well. But the thing to know about condos, several things that we're going to talk about, is there are just each condo and townhome community is going to have their own set of rules, have their own set of bylaws. So it's important that if you live there, if you own a unit, that you stay current, know what's going on with the HOA. I try to make it to our annual HOA meeting just to know what's coming up. Special assessments, upcoming special assessments, depending on the age of the condo or townhome, then you may be facing special assessments soon. Maintenance is required. You may need to, redo the vinyl exterior siding, repair the roofs or put on new roofs, pave the parking lot, right? There's various things that could allow the HOA community to put a special assessment to make sure that we're preserving the value of the neighborhood, of the condo and townhome. When we have this discussion, we typically only think of condo and townhomes for residential, but know that you could have condo and townhomes also for office space. Some office complexes kind of look like residential, and then you start seeing the sign and all the various suites, I guess would be the difference in what they call it. So we're not just specifically talking about residential. We could also be referring to office as well. So let's talk first, let's break these apart, and let's talk first about condos. With condominiums, and by the way, we're going to break off a license law and commission rule for a minute, and now the references you guys see here are the page numbers to where we can find this in the real estate manual. So if you have your big blue book, you can follow along. If you're on the digital subscription, then you can find the 303 tab that we looked at yesterday. So with condo ownership, owners own air. Condo owners own air. We own from sheetrock to sheetrock, or paint to paint, or wall to wall, however you want to look at it. There is no ownership on the outside. It's all interior. Walls in ownership is another way I've heard of that. So with condo owners, you can stack condos because condo owners don't own land. They don't own airspace. So you can put them one on top of the other. Condo owners also share ownership of the common areas. Common areas are owned by condo owners as tenants in common. So there's two forms of ownership going on with condos. There's the ownership of the individual unit, and then there's a tenant in common ownership with the common areas. I think we're all good with common areas. We're referring to like the breezeway, stairs, parking lot, pool, clubhouse, tennis courts, whatever, playground, anything within the community that we can share. Condo owners may own limited common areas. They may have access to limited common areas. So maybe there's an assigned parking space. Maybe there's a storage building, a balcony. Has anybody had the opportunity yet to show one of the condos in downtown Winston? We've taken all these old RJR warehouses and rezoned them and converted them to apartments. And let me tell y'all something, they are nice. If you get the opportunity to show it or shadow somebody showing it, jump on it. They are nice. And I know several of them may say that as an owner in one of these, you have your pick. You either get 2 parking spaces or a storage building, right? So you can kind of pick what you want, and that comes with the ownership of that. So you can choose what you want, how you want it. Yeah, if you get the chance, a lot of downtowns are doing this, aren't we? We're revitalizing. And again, we're taking these old, in our case, they're the RJR tobacco warehouses and converting them. Downtown Winston-Salem is getting really big, really fast. Have you tried that park downtown on a Saturday night lately? It's I'd go early if I were you, so you can get a space. So does a condo owner own the land on which the structure is built? Do your head one way or the other. Does a condo owner own the land? No. Do they own the airspace above? Do your head? No. So no to both. Remember, that's why we can stack them. That's that walls in ownership. Everybody good with that? Nothing on the exterior. That's all responsibility of the HOA. Insurance for condos, I'm learning as I'm trying to get quotes for new insurance. Insuring condos isn't as easy as one would think. Anybody has recommendations for an insurance company that I can talk to, I would greatly welcome it. There's a different policy for condo ownership because first off, you don't own anything on the outside. So it's pretty much this HO6 policy is a walls in coverage. Pretty much what the policy covers is my personal property, any of the fixtures, and fire. If the building burns down, something like that. But I think part of the risk that insurance companies see with insuring a condo, the unit that I own, for example, the building that I own, no, the unit that I own is in a building with 7 other units. So there's 8 tenants in this, or 8 owners in this one building. And there's just more risk there, I think, because if my neighbor catches his kitchen on fire, then it's going to affect how many of us, So I think that's part of the concern that insurance companies have. But of course, the individual owner should have insurance for their unit. And then the HOA is going to make sure that the exterior, that the outside is insured as well, the common areas. And that's going to be rolled into your monthly or quarterly or annually HOA dues, however that's handled through the HOA. North Carolina, we have something called the North Carolina Condominium Act. We got it in 1986. I don't think you need to know that date for your test, but I would have an idea of that date. Why is that date important to us? Well, if you're working with a buyer or a seller in a transaction, whether or not we have to abide by the North Carolina Condominium Act, it depends on when the building was built, right? If you're dealing with an older condo that was built prior to 1986, then it doesn't fall under the North Carolina Condominium Act. Particularly, the Condominium Act typically addresses issues for new construction condominiums, anything built after 1986. And one of the things that the Act says is that the developer has to provide a public offering statement before the purchaser can purchase the first unit. This is the first purchase of a unit, not the resale. And what the public offering statement does is just a disclosure to the buyer about the information about the community, the information about the development, the HOA. Resales could be provided this information, but the Condominium Act, again, in this case, just addresses new construction, new condos. So resales should be getting a resale certificate. If the developer's long gone, then I would check with the HOA. Some HOAs are funny. Some HOAs will only talk to the owner of a unit. They won't talk to anybody else. So let's back up. If you're the listing agent, I would encourage you to talk to your seller about getting this information, because what is a good buyer's agent going to ask for? They're going to ask for information about the HOA. So if the seller is the only one that they'll talk to, let's help them get that information. Another thing that the Condominium Act does is it gives the purchaser of a brand new unit a 7-day right of recession. When a buyer is buying a brand new unit, the first sale of a new unit, the buyer is offered the 7-day right of recession, which means they have 7 days to consider the contract, look at the public offering statement, review the covenants and bylaws, any of the restrictions that go with the condo. And they have the right to change their mind. If they terminate the contract for any reason within 7 days, they will get back any deposits that they put down. So they can legally cancel their contract. Keep in mind, this 7-day right of recession only applies to new construction. It does not apply to resale. So once the unit is sold the first time, that 7-day right of recession doesn't apply anymore. Taxation, each individual unit is taxed separately. So the owner of the unit pays property taxes. The community will have taxes. Again, that common area tax for that property will be rolled into the HOA dues. So if your buyer's wondering what all their HOA dues include, help them get that information, of course, but no, there's things like maintaining the common areas. You know, we just tend to think of the lawn crew that comes out once a week, but there's taxes, there's insurance, there's all the other things on the property as well for the common areas. The developer of a brand new construction condo has to have everything finalized before we can sell the first unit. So there are no more preliminary covenants or preliminary bylaws. We have to have everything finalized and recorded if applicable before the developer can sell the first unit. And the developer, when selling these first units, first sale of units, is going to have a trust account. Remember that 7-day recession period. So the buyer's deposit is going to go in the trust account, and it needs to hang out there because if the buyer terminates, we need to have that money available to give back to them. After 7 days, the developer can transfer it to their operating account and use it however they plan to use that deposit. But they need to keep it for 7 days in the trust account. And if the buyer cancels, if they exercise their right to terminate, then their money, their deposits refunded to them. I will say that the developer does have the right to ensure that the funds have cleared the bank. So they can, wait a day or two. Once they have verified that the funds have cleared the banks, then they're going to issue, then they can issue that refund. Questions on condos? Right? Townhomes. Townhomes are treated a little bit differently. Townhomes are different. Townhome owners own land and air and exterior. One thing that may set townhomes apart is that they generally have party walls. This neighbor and this neighbor may share a wall. Townhomes can be 1 story, 2 story, 3 stories, however big, again, because they own more than the interior. So with townhomes, the unit owner owns the exterior plus the land on which it sits and the air above. Most townhomes, there's a little bit of land out front, and out back you may have a patio, maybe with a little fenced in area. That is considered the owner of the townhome's property. Also with the townhomes, the common areas are owned by the homeowners association. Remember, we said with the condo, the common areas are owned by condo owners as tenants in common. So that's one big difference we see here with townhomes. As with condos, townhomes may also offer limited common areas. So an assigned parking space or a storage area or building. The North Carolina Condominium Act of 1986 does not apply to townhomes. Why? Because townhomes aren't condos. So they are two different things. However, townhomes may be subject to the Planned Community Act. That's about all we're going to say about that in this class. There's your reference. I think the important thing to know by that is that the North Carolina Condominium Act only applies to condos. So can the purchaser of a brand new townhome, do they get a 7-day right of recession? Brand new townhome, new construction townhome, do they get that 7 days? No, that only applies to condos. We can't let the name of the community dictate whether it's a condo or a townhome. Okay, it's all how it falls out in the definition. Condo owners don't own anything exterior, townhome owners do. That's probably the biggest distinction between the two. Some similarities with them, condos and townhomes. They're both going to be in an HOA. An HOA is both going to regulate the common areas and the community as well. Dues can be monthly, quarterly, annually, maybe semi-annually. Just depends on how it was set up by the developer. The information provided should specify what's covered. We're going to look at a form in just a minute that'll help the purchaser, the buyer, know if I pay X amount a month in HOA dues, what is covered. Covenants should be provided, bylaws, restrictive covenants, anything to let the buyer know what they're buying. I'm a firm believer that buyers should have a right to know what they're buying. And then typically, as we said, with condos and townhomes, there's going to be special assessments for repairs. So every once in a while, the roofs had to be redone. Every once in a while, the building may need painted or vinyl siding replaced, or the parking lot needs to be paved. They're killing me with my condo right now. I mean, these were probably built mid-70s. And you know, when something goes, like it kind of all goes together. So probably all within the last 10 years, we've put vinyl siding on, we've put new roofs on, we've repaved the parking lot. We've just been a constant special assessment. But you know what it's done to the value of our community? It's really helped bring that value up. It looks much nicer now. I mean, they've taken down some of those dead, dying trees. So the work that they've done, it definitely looks a lot better when you pull up in it now versus than what it did a couple years ago. So I know a lot of homeowners grumbled about the special assessments, but I'll tell you, you know, my HOA may be unique, I don't know, but my HOA was willing to work with the homeowners. Do you need to break up the special assessment and make payments? You know, we'll work with you to make this easier for you, because I understand that's a hardship, but it does help with the value. I really wish they'd come through and redo our windows. But that would require going into every single unit. And that is the challenge right there. Questions or comments on condos and townhomes?
So with the condo, you have on the new condo, you have the 7-day rescission period.
Mhm.
And if you have the due diligence, which is if you have a 10-day due diligence, how does that work with each other?
There may not be a due diligence fee for new construction. It might just be a deposit. So and you know, the inspections, I mean, anybody's always welcome to get an inspection, right? Even if it's new construction, you're encouraged to have a home inspection done, because I mean, builders make mistakes too, right?
Absolutely.
So that, you know, if I were working with a buyer buying new construction, but like, look, we got these 7 days, let's go heavy on the deposit, you know, knowing that you can get this back, we can get the home inspector in, you know, we'll give you a chance to read the covenants and the bylaws. There may even be a different contract, because it's not uncommon for the developer or the builder to use their own contract and not the standard forms that we have. So that may kind of eliminate, they may not make that available, that due diligence period available, because there is deposits and there is that 7-day recession.
Okay.
I would just say if you list a townhome, you may want to find out what the transfer fee is, because I ran into that issue. And it was quite expensive, and the seller, I think they're requiring the seller to pay it, and sellers don't always like to do that.
Right. And that's a great point, Chastity. Thank you. To your point, the HOA may also specify who pays the transfer fee. Is that up to the seller to pay it, or is it up to the buyer? I mean, there's administrative work, you know, for the HOA to put in the new information, right, for the new owner. So there very well may be a fee. Yeah, and that's a good. So, you know, when you're listing anything in an HOA like that, I would have this, I always have my sellers, do you know who to get in touch with the HOA? Do you have a contact person? Can we go ahead and get this information now before we list? Because like I said, we know a good buyer's agent is going to ask these questions, and you got Chastity through personal experience. Now, when she's helping her buyer buy a townhome or a condo, she's going to have questions like this up front, you know? So I think, I don't know, when I list properties, I like to make my properties easy to sell. I don't understand some agents out there that won't provide you anything, won't give you. I want my stuff easy to sell. So I try to get you everything I can so you can make this decision, so we can close on it and move on. That's just me. But I always have the conversation with my sellers, you know, do you have the covenants? Can I get my hands on those bylaws? Give me what you got so we can upload it as an attachment to the MLS and let the buyer look at it. A form I want to look at, and then we're going to break for lunch. We're under additional forms. If it's a new construction, then the residential property and owners association disclosure is not required, right? Everybody good with that? The RPODS is only required for resale. So if it's a new construction, RPODS isn't required. So if there's an HOA, new construction with an HOA, although the RPODS isn't required, we still need to disclose the owners association information. And that's what this form helps us do. It tells us this is for when residential property and owners disclosure statement is not required. For example, new construction, vacant lot land, or agreement by the parties. And what this form does, this is an addendum, which means it adds to. When you see the word addendum, see the word add. An addendum adds to. And what this is doing is this is telling the purchaser about the HOA information. If you're familiar with the RPODS, Residential Property Owners Association Disclosure Statement, the last page and a half of the RPODS are Owners Association information. So pretty much what we've done is taken that last page and a half, pulled it out, and created this form so we can still have this available. So the seller represents the buyer, the name of the HOA, what the dues are, currently what the dues are, per month, quarter, year, whatever, contact information of the HOA. You may have a case where there are two different HOAs. So if there are multiple HOAs, you want to specify all of that. Maybe, for example, one is mandatory and one is optional. So you might have, for example, the mandatory for the common areas, and then the optional for, the pool membership or the gym and the clubhouse, whatever. Provide the information for the buyer. I like this a whole lot. The buyer looks at you and says, what do my HOA dues pay for? Well, we're going to have this information hopefully completed by the seller or the developer, whichever, that tells us what your HOA dues go for. Does it cover property taxes, management fees, street lights, etc.? So I like this as a nice handy dandy checklist about what's included. Again, though, this doesn't negate helping them get their hands on those covenants and bylaws. Help them get that information. If they're not available through the seller, then you should be able to find them on public records too. Keeping in mind that every single county is different. Just when you think you've mastered one county's GIS system, then you look at a different county and it's like starting all over again, is it not? So every single county's GIS is different. As of this date, there are no other dues or special assessments proposed by the developer, except, again, the developer or the seller need to disclose if there's any special assessments confirmed or proposed. As of this date, there are no unsatisfied judgments or pending lawsuits, except anything noted here. Fees and charges, here's that transfer fee that Chassie was talking about at this form, and if we're aware of it. If your seller doesn't know, have them call the HOA and say, do you know of any, what are the transfer fees and who are they going to get charged to? We're also asking the seller or developer to provide any documents related to the HOA. So the covenants, bylaws, articles of incorporation, etc. This is considered a seller disclosure. So the seller's going to sign it when we list. We can upload it to MLS as an attachment to make it available to any agent that views it. And then when we write up the offer, we have our buyer sign it and we submit it with the offer, letting the seller know that the buyer's received it and signed it, hopefully looked it over as well. So Owners Association Disclosure Addendum. Typically used when the RPODS isn't required. Questions? Okay. All right. Y'all ready for lunch? I'm ready for lunch. All right, so what do you got? 12:40. So let's come back at 1:15. We'll give us a couple extra minutes. So again, we're all going to log out. My laptop needs a break too. So we're going to all log out. I'll log back on about 10 after 1, and we'll get started right back up at 1:15. Everybody good with that? 1:15. All right, y'all have a good lunch. Go outside and get some fresh air. It's nice out there.